Okay, we just need we need Mark. No, Martin. Where's Martin?
He was there. As soon as I sit down, it'll be time to stand up again. So just stand like church.
Okay, exactly. Okay, everybody ready? Good evening and welcome to the September 19th, 2017 Federal Way City Council meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and let's have Troop 329 of the Boy Scouts come forward over here. And they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, gentlemen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming tonight. Okay. We've got got a crowded agenda tonight, and the first thing we're going to have is something very important, which is the ceremonial swearing in of newly promoted officers. Chief Wong, would you please come on up?
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Burbidge, and members of the council. This evening, we'd like to take a few moments to publicly recognize and celebrate the promotion of two outstanding individuals to the rank of lieutenant and the appointment of two other individuals to the position of corporal. These individuals have consistently demonstrated strong work ethic and principled leadership. They are universally respected by their peers and are certainly deserving of this recognition. First, we have Lieutenant Keith Schmidt. Lieutenant Schmidt is a 28-year veteran of law enforcement, originally serving with the Twin Falls Sheriff's Department in Idaho. He came to the Federal Way Police Department in April of 2004, where he has since worked in a patrol capacity. Keith was selected as a field training officer in 2006 and held the position through 2015. In 2014, Keith was awarded the highest policing honor, the Medal of Valor, for his courageous actions during an active shooter incident. In 2015, Keith was both appointed to the position of corporal and selected as a firearm instructor with the Force Training Unit. He assumed the role of acting lieutenant in November of 2016, supervising patrol officers. Pinning his badge tonight will be his wife, Julie Schmidt. Julie, if you could come on up. And you can bring her with you. All right, nice job, Julie. Next, we have Lieutenant Mike Waddell. Lieutenant Waddell is an 18-year veteran of law enforcement. Mike came to the Federal Way Police Department as a lateral police officer in 2007. Previously, he served as a deputy sheriff with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in California for 8 years. In 2010, Michael was selected for the Federal Way PD Bomb Unit, and he later graduated from the FBI's Hazardous Devices School. He worked as a detective in our criminal investigation section, focusing on felony property crimes investigations from 2013 to 2014. He was appointed to the position of corporal in 2015 and is a recent graduate of the Advancing Leadership Program. And pinning his badge tonight is his wife, Crystal Waddell. Please come on up. Next, we have Corporal Eric Davis. Corporal Davis is a 24-year veteran of law enforcement and has served with the Federal Way Police Department in a patrol capacity for nearly 2 decades. Prior to his service here in our community, he worked for 5 years as a deputy sheriff in Union County, Arkansas. Beyond his law enforcement experience, Eric proudly served in the United States Marine Corps Reserves from 1990 to 1999, where he earned a combat action ribbon during a deployment to Southeast Asia in support of Operation Desert Storm. He has held the position of field training officer since 2002 and is awarded the Medal of Distinguished Service in 2003 and earned the highly regarded title of Master Defensive Tactics Instructor in 2007. And pinning his badge tonight will be his wife, Diana Davis. Next is Corporal Sean Daniels. Corporal Daniels is a 12-year veteran of law enforcement. Sean earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from California Lutheran University in 2005. Upon graduation, he was hired as a police officer with the Los Angeles Police Department, where he worked from 2005 to 2012. Sean came to the Federal Way Police Department as a lateral police officer in late 2012 and was selected as the firearm instructor with the Force Training Unit in 2013. Because of his actions during an active shooter incident in 2014, he was awarded our highest policing honor, the Medal of Valor. Sean has also served as a field training officer since 2015. Pinning his badge tonight will be his wife, Jen Daniels. We're very proud of these individuals. Please join me in congratulating these individuals for their significant career achievement. Lieutenants, if I could have you come up. Yep. And corporals, you can come up a little closer. We'll do lieutenants first.
Lieutenants, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name. Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I am a citizen of the United States.
That I am a citizen of the United States.
And the state of Washington.
And the state of Washington.
That I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
The Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
And will to the best of my judgment.
And will to the best of my judgment.
Skill and ability.
Skill and ability.
Truly, faithfully.
Truly, faithfully.
Diligently and impartially. Perform the duties of lieutenant.
Perform the duties of lieutenant.
In and for the city of Federal Way.
In and for the city of Federal Way.
County of King.
County of King.
State of Washington.
State of Washington.
And as such duties as prescribed by law.
As such duties as prescribed by law.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Corporal, step right up. Please raise your right hand. Please state your name. Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I am a citizen of the United States.
That I am a citizen of the United States.
And state of Washington.
And state of Washington.
And that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
And I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
And will to the best of my judgment.
And will to the best of my judgment.
Skill and ability.
Skill and ability.
Truly and faithfully.
Truly and faithfully.
Diligently and impartially.
Diligently and impartially.
Perform the duties of corporal.
Perform the duties of corporal.
In and for the city of Federal Way.
In and for the city of Federal Way.
County of King.
County of King.
State of Washington.
State of Washington.
As such duties as prescribed by law.
As such duties as prescribed by law.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Good luck and congratulations. Okay, next we'll have the presentation of the Federal Way Target Store of a Citizen Thank You banner. At this time, I'll invite Betty Taylor to come forward to the podium. And also, we've got Jessica Kingery of Target. And this is for donations to National Night Out at Town Square Park. So do we have Jessica here? Oh, come on up. And Betty, can you just tell us a little bit about National Night Out and actually, Jessica, you can please go over by the podium where, and Councilmember Honda is bringing the banner up, maybe on the other side, sorry. Betty, you want to tell us a little bit about National Night Out and what you did, and also Councilmember Honda as well.
Well, as we all know, National Night Out is national, meaning that national is all 50 states, and basically National Night Out basically is the first Tuesday in August. And I remember being at one of the community connection meetings, and the topic came up about National Night Out, and Mayor Jim Farrell asked me if I would take charge of National Night Out for the new Town Square Park. And so I knew I had to do that because I wanted to make the city look good, but then in order to do that, I knew I had to have a team of people with me. I appreciate Mayor Jim Farrell. I appreciate him so much. Through that, the committee was formed, and the committee consisted of myself, Susan Honda, Joe Bowman, Jeremy Dawson, and Clara Wilson. We collaborated together, and we put in Tammy Campbell. Tammy Campbell played a big role in National Night Out. We appreciate everybody that came. We appreciate. I think we served over 300 people, and it was at the new Town Square Park, and it was really good. Had lots of entertainment, and Target came, and they represented really well. They provided 250 bottles of water. They provided all of the hot dogs, all of the hamburgers, all of the hamburger buns, and all of the hot dog buns. And so, and we appreciate Target for being in the city. We appreciate Target also for reaching out to the city. We appreciate the phone call that was given to contact through Jerry Lynn, who basically contacted us because she knew this is what we're putting on. And so we want to make our city proud.
And Councilmember Honda, did you want to say a few words and show us, and maybe you and Betty could show us the banner as well?
Thank you. I would like to thank Target because they called us about 5 days before the event, and they offered to pay for the food. And that's a big deal because National Night Out, when you're in your neighborhood, you have a barbecue that you have from your homes. But this was a citywide event where we invited everyone from the city to come. We didn't know how many people were coming. It was the first time we had a citywide event in one location. And Target came through in a very, very short time. And so we really appreciate them. We also appreciate all the performers that we asked the school district for some help on short notice, and Dr. Campbell reached out to her staff, and we had a fascinating, fun, diverse evening. It was so fun, and we're looking forward to doing it again next year with much more planning time. We only had about 5 weeks. But we have a banner, and it's a picture of the site where Town Square Park, and it's signed by citizens and elected officials, and we'd like to give it to you guys at Target for all of your support.
Thank you so much.
Jessica, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah.
We'll hold it for you.
Perfect.
And Betty and Councilmember Honda, great job. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Jessica?
thank you. Hi, everyone. I am the HR manager at the Target here in Federal Way. I just wanted to say a few words and thank you guys so much for this. We appreciate it so much, and we're so lucky to be in this community. We love to give back to this community, so we were so happy to be a part of this event. Zach is pictured in this picture right here, and he's our assets protection. He really manned this event and was super passionate about it. We work really closely with the police department here in Federal Way, and they help keep our team members and our guests safe. So we were more than happy to help put on this event and donate all the food that we could. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. Betty, please, yes.
Okay, I want to say one thing. I like to say, oh God, okay. Whew. Okay, I'd like to say thank you to Bruce Honda. Bruce Honda is the one that put that picture together. He's the one that did this. He's the brains of this being so big. So Bruce, thank you so much.
Let's give Bruce a big round of applause. Thanks, Bruce. Bruce is the unofficial photographer for the city of Federal Way. Where two shall gather, there shall also be Bruce, to record it in picture. I think that's in the Federal Way Code somewhere. All right. Great job, Betty. Thank you so much. And Betty's a big cheerleader for this community and just does a great deal. And maybe at our next meeting, we'll talk about all the lays that Betty and Jerry Lynn have sent off to Houston for all those people that were affected by Harvey. And we'll talk about that perhaps at our next meeting and all the work that Betty and many volunteers have done to help those less fortunate and affected by one of the two, now 3 hurricanes that have hit the country in the past month. Okay, so now we've got the Proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2017, and I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Janet Chance of the Federal Way Domestic Violence Task Force to come to the podium to accept the proclamation regarding Domestic Violence Prevention Awareness Month. Thank you. Whereas domestic violence is a serious crime that affects people of all races, ages, gender, and income levels. And whereas, according to the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, police respond to about 50,000 domestic violence calls every year in Washington, and approximately 2,100 domestic violence calls every year in the city of Federal Way. And whereas, even with the significant number of calls responded to by police, 70% of domestic violence that occurs goes unreported. And whereas, although men and children can be victims of domestic violence, it is committed predominantly against women and is the leading cause of injury to women between the ages of 15 to 44 in the United States, more than car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined. And whereas children who grow up in violent homes are believed to be abused and neglected at a rate higher than the national average. And children that experience domestic violence are impacted in their education and are more likely to continue the cycle of domestic violence in dating relationships as youth and in adult relationships. And whereas each year, medical expenses from domestic violence total at least $3 to $5 billion, and businesses forfeit another $100 million in lost wages, sick leave, absenteeism, and non-productivity. And whereas, in response to the prevalence of domestic violence in this community, the Federal Way Domestic Violence Task Force members have been working toward promoting prevention, victim safety, community awareness, and abuser accountability through organization, education, and outreach. And now, therefore, we, the undersigned mayor and city council members of the City of Federal Way, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and urge our citizens to recognize this critical problem facing our entire community, work to prevent domestic violence, increase services to domestic violence victims and their children, and continue efforts to eliminate this crime, which affects all of us in this community, in our state, and in our nation. Signed this 19th day of October, 2017.
Thank you, Councilmember Burbidge, Mayor Farrell, council members. I am so proud to be a part of this elite group of domestic violence task force that the city of Federal Way has allowed us to pertain. Thank you once again for recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, bringing attention to the problems in our society, which is so truly sad in most of our families, in some of our families, I should say. We weren't brought into this world to yell, scream, hit, bully, but yet it does happen. Because of that, our task force the last several years spent several years putting together a domestic violence and dating violence that, with a donation from a nonprofit agency in our area, we were able to have these printed. We were allowed to put them into our schools, our high schools, and into the libraries. It's our hope for this new year, 2018, we'll be able to revamp this pamphlet, update it, and have it circulated into our middle schools, thus giving them the knowledge that love shouldn't hurt, dating violence is prevalent, it does happen. We need to bring awareness to our students and our youth of that fact. I'm hoping the city will have a line item budget 2018, so we may have these new pamphlets printed without going out and asking for donations. It would be much appreciated. I also take a quick moment to thank the city for recognizing the Federal Way Violence Coalition Steering Committee that you put together. Much appreciated. Thank you for your support. Just thank you very much. Commander Sumter, would you like to say a word? No?
I will say a word. Thank you for this opportunity to draw attention to the victims of this unseen tragedy. You know, it's very easy to remember victims of hurricanes and so forth. This is a hurricane that exists mostly in secret, and it's fitting that we take a month every year to remember those victims as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next under emerging issues and report of the mayor's emerging issues and report, we've got the Teresa Yvonne, the executive director of our Performing Arts and Events Center, to talk about the grand opening and gala fundraiser on September 9th. Teresa?
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, members of the public. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Federal Way Performing Arts Foundation, I'm going to run through some photos of our grand inaugural gala evening on Saturday, September 9th. It was 29 years in the making, so there we are before the dinner guests arrived with our art on the walls and all ready for everybody to come in. The Federal Way Youth Symphony was in the lobby performing as the guests came in for the reception prior to dinner. And there we are for our dinner. And we were sold out. The dinner was sold out, I'm glad to say. And then we went in for the performance of Rain, a tribute to the Beatles. And you'll see over here to the left, the people dancing in the aisles. Most everyone was standing. These folks never sat down the entire time. So it was really a wonderful evening. And there they are again. And then the closing after party with our patrons lounge up there, all aglow in blue, and people stayed till the very end. There's Mr. Selsky right there. But thank you very much for everyone that came out. It was a wonderful evening, and I am happy to say that we raised just slightly over $18,000 for the Arts for Youth program. So on behalf of the Federal Way Performing Arts Foundation, thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Good job. And Teresa, you did a fantastic job. It was absolutely, they really blew the roof off the place, so figuratively. All right. Now moving on to the next item. We had the report on the Mayor's Day of Concern food drive. Jeff Watson, Community Service Manager. Mr. Watson?
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. I'm very pleased to share information with you about this past Saturday's food drive as a part of the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry for 2017. The Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry is an opportunity to both raise awareness of hunger in our community and for the generous residents of Federal Way to donate food and cash to help Federal Way's most vulnerable persons and households. About half of King County households with incomes under $15,000 experience food insecurity, while a sizable number of residents with incomes as high as $50,000 have reported it as well. 21% of Federal Way residents reported running out of food and money for a period of time in the past year. Residents who describe themselves as Hispanic experienced food insecurity at nearly 3 times the county-wide average. And 1 in 5 Washingtonians relies on their local food bank. We're very pleased to have a group of excellent partners that we work with this year and that we've worked with in the past. It includes 4 grocery stores, two of them Walmarts, as well as Waste Management. And I want to point out specifically Waste Management and the tremendous job that they did this year. And I'll talk a little bit about the donation that they were able to make. One of the things that they do is they reach out to their clients, their customers, and encourage them to leave food bags that their drivers pick up at the curb. In addition to our partners, we have a lot of volunteers that help out with the food drive. Of course, there's the hardworking members of the City Council. In addition, there were 24 volunteers spread out across the 4 grocery stores where donations of food and cash were accepted this past Saturday. This is perhaps a little bit difficult to see. It's a little tiny, but I do want to point out that this year the total raised at the grocery stores was a little over 3,700 pounds of food. But I think, again, the real star of this was Waste Management, and they were able to collect nearly 12,000 pounds of food, which is a testament to them as well as their customers. So we had a total of about 15,500 pounds of food. In addition to the food, there were cash donations this year totaling approximately $260,000. Unfortunately, this is a little bit of a decline from prior years. Safeway normally participates in this, and I think there's some corporate policy issues that they're working through, and we expect them to join us again in the future and see those numbers pick back up again. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
We do want to say thank you very much to Jerry Lynn and all of your coordination efforts to make sure her son was out there, and we had many volunteers. I want to say thank you to all the volunteers who participated, and it was really a tremendous effort on behalf of Waste Management to bring that amount of food in. It's absolutely. Can we go back a couple of slides?
Certainly.
And to where it shows the 11,000 pounds. And then last year, how much was it?
4,400 pounds is what they brought in last year, so almost more than double.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just tremendous. I'm a little bit awestruck. So
that's great.
Very, very thankful for the generosity of Federal Way citizens and the help of Waste Management.
Council, any questions or comments? I know many of you were there over the weekend, and thank you. All right, thank you very much. That's great news. Okay, then we've got other items in regard to my report. We've had some community events. We had the Chick-fil-A grand opening on 9/14, so that's finally open. I want to say thank you, special thanks to the police department and Lieutenant was it Brigham Schultz, who had a traffic plan in place and made sure that in other communities they've had some delays or backups with the Chick-fil-A grand opening. This went absolutely fantastic, and I'd like to thank our team for taking care of that. This Thursday, we've got the 25th anniversary of the Korean Community Quarterly Meeting. That's going to be over at the Performing Arts and Event Center, and my gosh, it's Michael Park, and I'd like to thank Yarden Weidenfeld, who's been helping to supervise that event, and look forward to seeing many people at that event on Thursday evening. We had the Safe at Home event put on by PSE this past Saturday, and that was really all about disaster preparation and earthquake preparation. And I was expecting a lot of people, but I did not expect, this was at the Super Walmart at about 9 a.m. on Saturday, and the line stretched. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of people. I know several council members were there as well, but hundreds of our neighbors were there, and it's always good to get that kind of preparation. Ironically, actually, we had a fairly large delegation from the city of Federal Way travel back to Emmitsburg, Maryland, to the National Emergency Training Center to train for exactly that kind of disaster. And there were folks from the school district, Lake Haven, the fire department, the city, St. Francis Hospital, our community emergency response teams, the CERT teams, and it was we had quite a number of people back there for that training, and we're going to be in continuing to improve on our plan, but it actually perfectly dovetailed with the efforts that have gone on by Ray Gross, our emergency manager, on those issues. So it's very timely if you consider not only the national the disasters that have occurred in the southeast section of our country, but also in regard to earthquakes. Just look at the damage that was caused in Mexico with catastrophic failure of the infrastructure in the building. So that kind of planning is always very important. Then we had the first ever 2017 Symphony Blues Festival at Town Square Park, and that was great. And Renee Ewing and her husband Richard did a great job throwing that all together, and I'd like to thank all the vendors for that. We had the Reach Out 7th Annual Pay It Forward Breakfast at a Christian Faith Center Church here in town, and there were hundreds of people there, and their generosity really shined through, and it was a great event to help the less fortunate and the struggling in our community. Okay, and that's my report. And now for the most important part of the evening, citizen comment. Everybody knows the rules of citizen comment, and I'll read a couple of names. I've got a written comment that we'll save toward the last. All right, first off is Grace Nash. Next will be Mr. Bob Woolley, and then H. David Kaplan.
Hi, I'm Grace Nash, and I'm 10 years old. I live in Federal Way in the North Lake neighborhood where I lived my whole life. I don't want a big concrete building by my house and neighborhood because it's big and a lot of trees will have to be cut down. We need trees to have a healthy environment and clean air. I'm also concerned with trucks and traffic. Next year I'm going to middle school, and my bus stop will be by the big trucks that go through our neighborhood. Also, me and my family love going on walks on the Weyerhaeuser trails and finding cool painted rocks. We also like to paint them ourselves and go on trails to hide them. If there is a big warehouse there, we cannot have those fun moments. One of our favorite walks is on the trail to the big log on the west shoreline of the lake. We sit on the log and look up at the clouds to find cool shapes. We just got a new puppy who loves to walk to the log and splash in the water. So tonight I would like you to ask you to deny the permit for the warehouse so we can keep our trails and big semi-trucks off our street, and also keep working together to preserve the west shoreline of North Lake so we can keep walking there with our friends and family. Thank you.
Great job, Grace. Great job. Mr. Bob Woolley.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, Boy Scouts, Troop 329, it's always good to see the Boy Scouts present at a meeting like this. Mr. Mayor, I have 3 minutes. I have myself and 2 Lake Jean households with 2 members here. That's 5.
But, please.
Jordan visited Lake Jean last Friday. I would like to have him counted on my configuration of 5. I have my nap cap on, my thinking cap. I retired my combat hat the last meeting. I have my combat shirt on in lieu of my hat. I would like to recommend to everybody, as a Vietnam veteran, that the Vietnam War documentary that is on this week has had 2 episodes. The 3rd episode is tonight. I encourage you to watch the documentary. It's well done, and it presents the correct perspective that y'all should walk away with. I commend that for your viewing. Mr. Mayor, this may well be my last time at this podium dealing with Lake Jean, unless Jordan makes a presentation, and I would like to have the prerogative to make comments following Jordan's presentation. Lake Jean has been in the throes of toxic conditions for 5 years. On the 1st of August, we had our first significant toxic bloom. We had another one on the 11th of September that was sampled and tested. It came in at 1,175 UGs per liter. That's 195% above the toxic level. During the month of August, we had 8 other blooms that were not sampled, but the club was informed of them, and we have not seen any action by the Twin Lakes Golf Club, and they hold 2 permits to treat the lake if the lake is toxic. I spoke of Jordan's report too many times. He has rendered his report to the council. I have written a critique of his report. Y'all have a copy of it. Jordan's report was important. My critique is important too, and I wait Jordan's reply, which I'm sure is forthcoming. There's been a matter of what is meant by unintended consequences if we had a public nuisance ordinance struck by the city council. I would like to have the opportunity to tell you what, in the minds of the residents, what unintended consequences might be. We all purchased property on Lake Jean, and we knew the value on Lake Jean was a plussed up value of $24,000 taxable value of your property. Upon purchasing our properties, we didn't expect blue-green toxic algae to saturate our lake. We expected that if something like that did occur, we could count on the responsible entities to take corrective action. That did not occur. We appealed to the city council 18 months ago to help us deal with that situation. We're still waiting. Mr. Mayor, I'm taking off my thinking hat and I'm putting on my Federal Way hat. We're waiting for the Way City Council to act with the instruction from the city. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. H. David Kaplan, and then Mary Ellis and Rodney Simpson.
I've been attending live stage performances for 74 years. This early immersion in the arts made me aware that culture was an essential part of my life. The first efforts for a performing venue locally started with the Federal Way Coalition of the Performing Arts in 1988. Then when Federal Way incorporated in 1990, I knew that an arts element had to be provided by the city for its residents. I was on the task force that created the first comprehensive Parks and Recreation Plan for the city. It included the proviso for a performing arts center. After several months of public discussion and hearings, the final Parks and Recreation Plan was unanimously approved by the City Council in December 1991. The first designs for Celebration Park in early 1999 included a performing arts center on the site now occupied by the community center. There was quite a gap after that, but as Teresa Yvonne pointed out, it's only taken us 29 years to finally have a performing arts center that can also be used for meetings and many individual events. I wondered what the initial programming would be and eagerly awaited the list of events. The PAC staff has developed a high quality of performances that will please all segments of our community. As time goes by, I'm sure the offerings will widen as public input recommends programming choices. It's been worth waiting for. Let the show begin.
Thank you, H. David. Mary Ellis. Mary?
Evening. I'm going to just read my letter, which I've sent out to all of you. It may not be word for word since I didn't bring my glasses. But after years of working and planning to save Camp Kilworth, we're again at the point where we might be losing it. To give you a quick history of it, in 1934, William and Augusta Kilworth bought this property at the height of the Depression. It's 25 acres, high bank, coastal forest. It was logged in the 1920s, so it's second growth. But they bought it, and immediately the next day deeded it over to the Boy Scouts of America. So it has served since that time, but and by 1936, the Tacoma Rotary built a lodge that overlooks the Puget Sound and a view of the Cascades, and it has a beautiful amphitheater in front of it, and it has been continually used since that time. But then the intent of the deed was to educate, at that time, boys. They've gone broader than that because it over the years has expanded to Girl Scouts and Campfire Girls and church groups and just community in general. And it is a piece of property that has continued to be used. In about 2003, the Scouts began to log it. And so that called our attention to the property because by the deed, which we have a copy of, they were never allowed to profit off the property. It was just supposed to benefit and promote Scout skills. And so we questioned that. And they also we found out at the time that they were going to sell it to a developer. By the deed, they were never allowed to profit off of the property. Now, if they abandoned the property, it went back then to the heirs or the foundations, of which there's two right now. There's two foundations. It would be returned to them. So it might be an opportunity right now because the Scouts literally have closed up the camp. So the city of Federal Way at that time, this was 2003, 2005, did a really great job of putting together a plan to create an environmental park. And so At that time, we were hoping that, but the courts, local courts approved it. The Supreme Court wanted to stick with the intent of the deed. But now if it goes back to the foundation, there might be an opportunity to look at it again. So we're here to ask, what is the possibility of creating something like Snake Lake in Tacoma, where we would continue to teach youth and community at large about the value of a piece of property as this. And we also want to know what's going to happen to the Rotary Lodge. If this property, we're very concerned because the scouts have left it. They've deeded, they say they've given it back to the foundations, but they actually have walked off the property. We've seen things going on that aren't good right now. So what is going to happen to this property? And it served the community, it served the youth of the community for all these years. And so we just want to know what the possibilities. Forterra suggested through conservation monies that you can buy up the development rights. So therefore, foundations were in the business to use their money for good things, would still get some money out of it. But we can't get answers. Before, it was a pretty open process, but we're really having trouble getting answers. So we're here to ask for your help, to look at the possibility of what could be supported in creating a lasting legacy for Federway and for Kilworth and the Scouts. So thank you. I'm a little over.
Thank you, Mary. Last week I met with Councilmember Martin Moore and Brian Tabram, and we were having a conversation about exactly this. I've tasked our legal counsel, Ryan Call, and our community development director, Brian Davis, to reach out to the Kilworth Foundation and find out essentially exactly what the status of the property is. And we'll be talking. I actually was communicating with Councilmember Duclos, the chair of our FedRec committee, that there was an interest in addressing this. And obviously it would maybe it would even address parks as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out exactly what's going on, and then we'll report back to the community what we learned, and then council will discuss this, and we'll start discussing possible options. So thank you very much. Yeah. I can tell you that you've got widespread support on the council here by many members who have great and deep connections with this property, with Scouts, and frequently I hear questions from the council and the community about what is going on with Camp Kilworth, and certainly that's a beautiful piece of property that we've been at. I would also say that if anybody has not been out there, that 1936 Rotary Lodge is really one of the treasures of this community. It is truly just a log cabin with a beautiful view, has a amphitheater in front of it. I was out there for an Eagle Scout event, I believe a year or two ago. And so that is something that we need to take a look at to make sure that is preserved. So we'll take a look at it, okay?
And there is no caretaker on the property.
Not anymore. The caretaker of the property met with me in my office, I'd say about a month ago, and Brian Davis, and shortly thereafter, I think the next day, his term or his employment ceased at that location. So they're clearly going through a transition on the property. It's something I'm watching very closely.
Well, we've seen some vandalism.
Mary, can you come back up to the podium so people can hear you, and to make sure our folks at home can hear you too? Could you say that again?
Yeah, they actually have, the caretaker has left. We've heard by the Scouts, what they're telling us is that they voted to give it back to the foundations. The foundations, we hear there's some kind of studies want done, but there is no ranger there at this time, and we've already seen activities that are going to bleed over into the surrounding communities, and it could possibly jeopardize with some very historic significance on this property, and it's a real shame. We're very, very concerned in the fact that they just chose to walk away from it.
Right.
So, interestingly enough, when we let them know that, they said, well, there's, right now you don't have to contact the police. And we're going, well, we would be a little concerned as to what's happening down there. But we're reluctant to go into the property because they have now posted it as no trespassing.
Right.
So we're kind of in that catch-22. We see things that we're concerned about, and from a historic significance, a community significance, and just to lose it like that would be a shame.
Mary, do you have Brian Davis's information?
No,
our
I do not.
community. Brian, would you please give your contact information? If you, he's going to come over to you, Mary, and he's going to give you, he's our community development director, and he's going to give you his contact information. Please keep him informed of what you see and anything concerning, okay?
Okay, I appreciate you. You've been listening to me for a long time about this, so.
You know what we're
thank
going to
you.
do? At the next council meeting, I believe it's on October 3rd, is that our next council? Ryan, October 3rd is our next council meeting?
I believe so.
Okay, we'll put this on for an update under my emerging issues report, and we'll talk about Kilroy.
Wonderful,
All right,
wonderful.
thank you very much. Okay, all right, Rodney Simpson. And then Brian Gilderoy. Rodney?
Hi, I'm Rodney Simpson, and I'm with Washington Can. I'm here today facing problems with landlords not being accountable to hold properly maintained properties. You know, things only get worse unless elected officials implement policies and strengthen tenants' rights and fight slumlords. I'm a single father of 2 children that I'm raising in Federal Way, and I've experienced this firsthand. I've had existing problems from the time I moved in till now, and I'm still having those problems with several things that they failed to come and fix, and I have no one to come to help ask for help or how to fight these people on getting my money, my hard-earned money that, you know what I mean, my job pays me, and not to get a suitable living. And, you know, when I first moved in, it was affordable, and I needed a place to stay. But as time went by, you know, they started raising the rent, but things never changed in the property or in my house. Overall, I feel landlords only care about profiting off of the community rather than fixing their problems. The landlords will continue to do this unless someone is there to help us. And I'm asking for you guys' help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rodney, thank you. Councilmember Moore, did you have a quick comment?
Thank you so much,
And I've got a
Mr. Mayor.
suggestion. Go ahead.
Rodney, thank you for coming up here. I know there's others, and Soshi, thank you for your leadership on this issue. And I also want to thank the chair of the Human Services Committee, Mark Copain. I know we had some of the Washington Can members coming into our committee to talk about landlord-tenant issues, and as a renter, I certainly care about the issue that you're talking about, and I'm looking forward to working with the mayor on this issue because I have some ideas and proposals along with our committee. So I just want to say thank you for speaking up for not just yourself and not just for the people here, but for the other individuals that are renting around this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rodney, our Human Services Manager, Jeffrey Watson, who's in the back of the room, he spoke a little bit earlier about the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry. I'm going to ask him to touch base with you here now. We've got your contact information, but I want to ask him to get maybe kind of a quick summary of a succinct summary of what the situation is, and we'll follow back up with you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Okay, and then we've got Brian Gilderoy, and then Susie Horan.
Hi, my name is Brian Gilderoy, and I'm a member of UFCW Local 21, and I'm here today to call on the council to create a rental inspection program. As a renter most of my adult life, and with rental prices skyrocketing in King County, there must be a check and balance to add to our economic equation of affordable housing. This inspection program can be a benefit to both renters looking for places to live and the owners looking for renters. With no real option of protection to renters like me currently in your city, my family and others will look to others to the issue of our rights as renters will be enforced. That is why I, along with my union, are urging you to address this issue now. Please introduce legislation to create a strong rental inspection program that will hold landlords accountable and keep families like mine safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. All right, Susie Haran. Oh, I said thanks.
Mayor Farrell, can I save my comments when we discuss Proposition 1?
Let's do that. Okay, thank you very much, Susie. All right, Stephanie Bukhari, and then Vivian Spence, and Suzanne Vargo.
My name's Stephanie. Sorry, I talk pretty loud, so I don't know how far to stand from this. I'm just here as an advocate for Washington Can. Just here to support everyone else that's already said little things about being a renter and the constant battles that they've had to deal with landlords. I personally had to go through an experience as well. Doesn't necessarily happen right now. Luckily, my husband and I recently bought a home. We actually just bought a house in Federal Way. So this is the first time in a long time that I've been in a city council meeting. So it's kind of cool to get back into the city and see what's going on now that I own a house here in the city. But basically, that's what I'm here for. Just kind of wanted to tell my story. I've had firsthand experience with slumlords, especially after I moved into my house that I was in for 3 years, which was the house I lived in prior to this house I own now. Upon moving in, I had numerous problems with the physical conditions of the house. It was frustrating trying to get a hold of the landlord after dealing with problem after problem. I recently attained a new job as a property manager and now have learned how often this really does happen to a lot of people, not just in Federal Way, but in many different cities here in the Washington state. It's very frustrating to work all the time just to be able to barely afford your rent, and then you have to come home to a home that's not really up to par with what you feel that you're paying. You're paying $1,200 a month for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment that, you hear the pipes all night, like it's just not even what it should be. It's just frustrating. And, just kind of want to back on that whole thing with right now putting together that inspection for the rental inspection program, and just another advocate to kind of back towards that. And that's really all I was here today, just to support the community.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Okay, Vivian Spence, and then Suzanne Vargo.
Good evening. Hello?
Yep.
I feel like I need a step stool. Good evening. My name is Vivian Spence, and I am part of this community. I am here today because landlords of this community are not making sure that tenants are being taken care of. Many of us work really hard and pay a lot of money for rent to deal with the physical conditions of our apartments. So I wanted to keep reading this, but I'm just going to talk to you about my story. So I moved from Atlanta. I work at the airport, and I thought that the living conditions in Washington would be way better than they actually are. Piggybacking what Stephanie said, it is really, really hard to work 2 jobs and go home and feel like this is not where I should be, this is not where I want to be or live. I am raising a child here in Federal Way, and I was not aware of the humidity and the mold problem, and maybe that is my fault. When I talked to the managers about my mold problem in my unit, they say, well, crack the windows. That might help. And they clean it with Clorox and paint over it and moving on. It turns out my sister is allergic to Clorox or any other products, and I have to, out of pocket, buy expensive mold cleaning products that are natural because they would not help me in this. It's like, well, this is what we have, and if we can't find any natural solutions, then it's on you to find a way to clean the mold. I have other issues with my unit where I have leaks from the apartment upstairs, pipe break, and I have had the carpet cleaned by the management. They bring this big machinery that takes a lot of my electric bill, and I had to pay out of pocket because my landlord would not pay for this electric bill, and this is not my fault that the pipes broke from the apartment upstairs to my apartment. So, with that being said, this is a very stressful situation, and this is not going to change unless we pass this legislation that will protect us tenants, because we don't have many rights here. So, we have collected 209 cards, and I'm going to give it to you guys in a second, and this is from the community, and they sign it, and this is what we want. Let's create a healthy housing code requirements for all landlords to follow, create strong, proactive city enforcement that holds landlords accountable to ensure proper maintenance on the units, and prevent landlords from raising the rent from our units. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, we'll pass these down, and then Vivian, we'll pass these down, and then maybe, did you want us to keep these, Vivian?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
Yes, many of us are dealing with this issue. I understand that.
Okay, we will have the city clerk take possession of these, and we'll figure out how to proceed from there. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, ma'am.
Okay, we've got,
Oh, darling, I think you took my paper with you. I'll let you say it if you want. Hi, audience. Hi, Mayor and City Council. I'm going to talk real quick. I'd like to address a very serious issue that is happening within our City Hall. We all know about the property and the people that would like to rezone in our area. In July of this year, one of these rezoners took it upon himself to start a delineating Class 3 wetland that is on his property. Filling, grading, tree cutting, and dredging were part of the first violation. He was reported to the city and supposedly given a cease order. I happened to stumble across this rezone a month later, and I documented new violations and reported those to the city. Fearing my concerns were not being taken seriously, I asked for a copy of the cease order, and you all have that in your hand. What I saw was really strange. You will notice that the case number is wrong. It should start with a 17 for our year, not 16. The dates are ineligible and differ from one another. It states that the code enforcer officer came into work on a Sunday and presented this to the violator. I do not think this is true. At no time was a notice posted for the public to see. I certainly did not see this order posted when I engaged with the homeowner, nor did the people who reported this in July. So was the order not posted, or did the homeowner remove it? And if it was removed, this also is a violation in itself. Possibly, this document was drafted for my benefit only. The handwriting is juvenile. You will not find an actual signature on either of these pieces of paper. And you'll notice that the V's on both of these pieces of paper go different directions. How does somebody's hand signature and they don't know how to do their signature? That is odd. It clearly states in bold letters a violation of the cease order would constitute jail time or a fine. This should have been the process when I reported new violations to the city. This did not happen. A restoration plan is the answer at the point, says the city. A deal was made with the homeowner, and he was to comply with, along with his biologist. He has his own biologist, very impressive. And so he must realize that the wetland is important if he has his own biologist. He did not comply with the city regarding the restoration plan, and they have allowed him 3 more weeks to continue. This is not the only time this has happened. 3 other times with rezoning properties. I believe code enforcement is deliberately looking the other way. I believe there is a conflict of interest between members of our council and these homeowners. I do not know why our code enforcement city is not collecting the monies that they should for violations. I'm asking for a moratorium and an investigation so we can have the proper checks and balances. It is very disheartening as a citizen when you see things go wrong and you are not able to go to your city and get any action. I have been ignored. as well as the other people who reported these violations. I will ask that state ecology please take over, since I cannot trust the actions of our city. I'm not sure who is telling code enforcement to look the other way, but this is serious violations. Please look into this, and please, let's not rezone until we get a good look at what all of these homeowners are doing to their property before SEPAs are studied. Thank you very much.
So, Ms. Varga, this is the first that probably everybody on this dais has seen these documents. We'll take a look at it. Brian, do you have a copy of this?
I do. We sent Ms. Vargo an email yesterday explaining the situation on this case.
Oh, please. What's the situation?
So he's in violation, as she said, and we're working with him on getting it restored. He has installed some mitigation measures in the meantime because there is a significant amount of fill in the wetland that needs to be removed. But prior to doing that, we do need that wetlands report, and so we're waiting on that report. But in the meantime, he has installed the mitigation measures that we asked of him. If we don't get the mitigation report, or if the wetland is not restored in a timely manner, then we'll proceed with the next steps of enforcement.
Ms. Varga is concerned that these are forged in some way. Do you have any concern?
I doubt that. I run my department very ethically and want to make sure that everything is done appropriately. If there has been any inappropriate activity, I'll certainly look into it.
Ms. Varga, please do not. Ms. Varga, please do not shout from the audience.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Please.
What's a timely matter?
So there's a couple of different issues. One is the wetlands report itself, which we want to have an idea of where the wetland needs to be restored. It's entirely likely that the actual restoration of the wetland will not occur until springtime, because we don't want the restoration to occur in the middle of the rainy seasons, which would not be able to restore the proper plant life that was there before. And so in the meantime, we just want it mitigated so that the drainage can go into the wetland without it damaging the wetland itself. So the report is what we're waiting on now, and we've given them, I think, a couple weeks to get that done, and then we'll put a plan in place for the restoration to occur.
Okay, thank you very much.
Why does it have a 2016 case number as opposed to 2017?
It could have been that this started in 2016. I don't know. I'll look into that.
Okay.
I mean, if we start a file in 2016 and it drags on for a while, we're not going to give it a new number on January 1st of 2017.
Okay. Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Who's writing the report that you're waiting on?
It would be the owner's wetlands biologist.
And do we have a biologist who will check it?
We do.
Okay.
Okay. Let's bring this back at the next council meeting. All right. Thank you very much. All right. The next item is a letter to be read by an individual identified as Sarah. No last name, no email, no address. I'll pass this down to be read into the record.
Letter reads, "To whom it may concern, I personally have lost a lot of respect for the city of Federal Way, especially the newest mayor and the police department. Never in my life have I been treated with such disrespect and felt like I don't matter in society. There had to have been a better way to proceed forward with basically throwing me and my fellow homeless family out of the woods on 336th onto the streets. We were made to feel like we were worth as much as the garbage people throw on the ground. We are now faced with the torturing dilemma of where to go from now on. It's definitely going to take a long time before my faith in the system is restored. Thanks, Sarah."
All right. And let's see here. That is the last. Oh, actually, no, I've got two more. All right. Then we've got a letter from Paul McDaniel. A letter to be read.
Letter from Paul McDaniel. It reads, "Dear Mayor Farrell,
My first question today addresses the financing for the Performing Arts and Events Center. On Wednesday, June 14th, 2017, at the Neighborhood Connection meeting held at Decatur High School, I asked if the city was unable to raise the final $8 million needed for the $32 million PAC project. Would that $8 million be in addition to the $6 million loan the city is getting to allocate to the New Market tax credits? I asked the question repeatedly and was told repeatedly that the city was not loaning any money towards the New Market tax credits. I was also at the May 16th, 2017 council meeting where I picked up a copy of the agenda which included item 7A, resolution, authorization of New Market tax credits financing transaction. On page 1 of resolution 362543039V2, it states the following. Whereas in connection with New Market tax credit financing of the project, the city will make a loan in the aggregate principal amount of $6,239,600, the leverage loan to COCRF Investors 77 LLC, a Delaware limited liability company. So since my question was too confusing and Mayor Farrell stated at Decatur the New Market tax credit deal was complicated, I will rephrase the question. If the city is unable to raise the remaining $8 million to need to fully finance the PAC project, are you, Jim Farrell, as mayor of Federal Way, willing to lock up over $14 million of city's funds in a project that's estimated to lose money for the first couple years? I don't care if bean counters have estimated there to be no net cash outflow from the New Market tax credit loan, or that the loan is an aggregate principal amount and not a flat-out loan. I would like a written response sent to the email list below. I would also like to address a second concern. I've heard that the city is not honoring its contractual financial obligation to the city of Federal, or the Federal Way Chamber for its tourism money. Is this true? If so, why is the city not following through on its obligations? I would like a written response sent to the email list below. After our last conversation, I was left with more questions than answers, and I feel my only next step will be to have a financial audit of the long-term financial impact of the following city projects: Community Center, Celebration Park, Downtown Park, Target building purchase, and land parcels currently on file with the city of Federal Way as the owner. I look forward to your verbal and written responses. Sincerely, Paul McDaniel.
Aday, our finance director, Aday, any comment on the New Market tax credit analysis or question?
Regarding the New Market tax credit, I think that is closed. We've received the money, and we're actually in the process of, I spoke with both of our consultants today, and we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow in terms of the transaction between the nonprofit and the Capital One. But that is pretty much closed and done with.
We received $2 million in New Market tax credits.
Correct.
Do we owe $6 million?
We do not owe $6 million. Yes, we have outstanding balance that we have 3 years to sort out, but no, we do not owe $6 million.
On the New Market tax credits?
No.
Right. Okay.
The way the New Market is structured, it's not any money that the city will be paying back. So there's no money for the city to pay back.
All right. Stephanie, I'll ask you our city clerk, to provide that communication to to our finance director Aday, and we'll get a response out regarding those questions. All right. Thank you, Aday. Okay. Are there any more citizen comment with regard to public comment? Not to mention the other issue we have on business with regard to the school district resolution. All right, hearing none. Moving on to the consent agenda. These items have gone through committee. They've already a three-person city committee, and they can be passed with a single motion. I'll go ahead and read them, and I'll ask whether a council member would want to pull any item for separate consideration. 5A, minutes for the September 5th, 2017 special and regular meetings. Item B, interagency agreement between Washington State Patrol and the Federal Way Police Department on commercial motor vehicle inspections. Item C, Valley Narcotics Enforcement Team, VNET, U.S. Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, HIDTA task force agreements. Item D, King County Registered Sex Offender Cost Reimbursement Agreement. Item E, authorization to accept 2017 King County Flood Control District Flood Reduction Grant. Item F, resolution, acceptance of grant fund for transportation improvement projects, authorization to accept NHS grant funding. Item G, resolution, acceptance of grant funding for transportation improvement projects, authorization to accept emergency relief program grant funding. Item H, 21st Avenue pedestrian connection, South 314th to South 316th, grand staircase 30% design status report. Item I, authorization to apply for and accept King County grant funding in support of local food waste prevention projects. Council, are there any items that the council member would want for separate consideration? Councilmember Honda?
Item H.
Okay. Item H is pulled. Council, any other items? Okay, Deputy Mayor Burbidge, do you have a motion?
I do. I move approval of items A through G and item I on the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now on to item H. Councilmember Honda.
Thank you very much. It's been a while since I've heard any discussion about the ground staircase, and when I am looking over the expenditures and the funding, the regional mobility grant, King County Metro funding, I recently reviewed a document, and I didn't, for King County Metro Regional Mobility Grant, and I did not see the City of Federal Way listed anywhere on it as receiving any funds.
Marwan, our Public Works Director.
Yes, we did receive the fund. As a matter of fact, we're getting reimbursement on the fund for the design work. So I honestly don't know what you have looked at, Councilmember Honda.
I'll show it to you.
How much did we get, or how much are we allocated?
We have $500,000 grant from King County Metro, and we just sent them a bill, and we received a check for $50,000 for the design work so far.
Okay.
So for the rest of the funding that we don't have, when we get to the 85% design completion status report, do we anticipate having the rest of the funding?
EJ?
So the goal is to move the project through to the design to the 85% and get a better understanding where the costs actually are, and then yes, to have the funding secured and a funding plan in place. There's a couple of different options that can be utilized for funding, be that the transportation impact fees for that local area, be that LIFT funding or REAP money or a couple other sources. So the goal is to try and identify a little more exactly what the project needs are, and then come to council with, at the 85% level, with a proposal, of where, from internally, where that money should be allocated from.
Do you have a date about when that would occur?
The goal is to have it to council at the end of the year.
The end of December?
This year, yeah. This project's slated, assuming it follows the original schedule outlined by council, this project goes to construction in the spring of next year. So the 85% and authorization to bid would have to occur December, January timeframe.
So if this funding doesn't occur, if these things don't happen, are we anticipating borrowing money for this?
I don't think we've had that conversation.
Marwan?
We are not anticipating to borrow any money for that particular project. The shortfall we have, there is two possible funding. One, we are in the process of applying for another PSRC grant. The grant amount, we're asking $750,000. We'll find out by the end of the year if that grant will be awarded. If we do not get that particular grant, the shortfall will still be approximately $1.5 million. And we are anticipating to utilize city fund, mainly REIT source, to fund the project, in addition to the mitigation fund that EJ have highlighted, which means that the hotelier that is going to be building facility at that location, they are required to pay transportation impact fee, and that fee will be diverted to that project. In addition to the ST3 site, any development on that site will be paying mitigation fee for transportation impact, and that money will go to the grand staircase also.
Thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Burbidge, you have a motion?
I do. I move approval of item H on the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. All right, now moving on to public hearing, and thank you for the folks that are here to have been patiently waiting. All right, so we've got a resolution, Federal Way School District number 210, proposition number 1. I'm going to review the process. I'll have folks come on up. It is important that we go through this process to make sure this is clear. Next up on the agenda is public hearing regarding Federal Way School District number 210, ballot proposition number 1, which is a measure to approve $450 million in bonds to construct new classrooms and replace and renovate aging and deteriorating school facilities. While state law normally prohibits the use of public facilities to campaign for or against ballot measures, there is an exception for council to take action collectively by resolution to express a position. The city provided the required public notice for this hearing, and both those in favor and opposition to the ballot measure will have an opportunity, will have an approximately equal opportunity to speak. As such, the public hearing will be broken into 6 different sections. Number 1 is school district presentation. Number 2, a pro statement. 3, a con statement. 4, a citizen comment, 3 minutes each. Then next, council discussion, and then potential council action. The city reached out to the pro committee for the ballot measure, and the pro committee member, Gregory Baruso, will provide a statement in support. There is no con committee, so the city will open up the floor for any party interested in making a statement against Proposition 1. In the agenda packet, there are 2 resolutions for council considerations, one in support of the measure and one in opposition. After discussion, council may choose to take action on one of the resolutions or take no action at all. With that, I would like to invite Superintendent Dr. Tammy Campbell from the Federal Way School District to the podium to provide a presentation on the ballot measure. Dr. Campbell.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Burbidge, members of the council, and members of our community. I'm joined today by Board President Jeffrey McAnalloy and 4 of our incredible scholars who will be joining us, talking a little bit about their experiences in some of the buildings that we've got on the bond measure. So we will provide an overview for you that just talks a little bit about what this bond measure will do for Federal Way Public Schools as well as the larger community. This bond proposition is aimed at rebuilding, renovating, and expanding our facilities. We will also be talking about the current state of our facilities in Federal Way Public Schools.
And then also focusing on preparing scholars for college and or the workplace as they leave our doors.
You can do this whole one.
All right. So when we talk about this, we have 19 buildings that are 40 years or older. The oldest building was built in 1956. And we think about what happened in 1956. IBM released their first computer that weighed over 2 tons. Next was the elementary school capacity. We're about 1,100 scholars over our capacity right now, so that's an overcrowding situation in the buildings we have. At Wildwood, we have 2 kindergarten classes, 44 5-year-olds in 1 classroom with 2 teachers. It'll also have safety enhancement. When these were built in the 50s and 60s, it was really a California-style open situation, and as we know what's happened over the last 20 years, it's not a safe and conducive piece. So this will take care of all 38 buildings, not just the 9 that are on the docket, from SCAP funds that will come out of this if we pass this bond. And finally, there is no increase in tax. It's a maintain of tax. So we will explain how it maintains. It's not an increase. It just maintains what you're currently paying.
So the reason behind this is that we've got aging, deteriorating facilities, and you've heard President McAnalloy talk about the safety concerns when you have multiple entrances, as well as safety related to wiring hanging from the ceiling and some of the buildings in terms of how they're starting to truly deteriorate. So we talked a little bit about this, 19 buildings, 40 plus years or older. The average year these buildings were built was 1965, and 14 schools were built between 1956 and 1968. And often when we talk about that, homeowners will say, well, my home is that old. My home could be as old as that. But what your home doesn't have are thousands of young people going in and out of them and creating this wear and tear. And 5 more schools plus Memorial Stadium opened between 1970 and 1976. So what was happening in the world when some of our schools were built? So you heard President McAnalloy talk about in 1956 when Mirror Lake was built, IBM introduced the first computer with a hard drive weighing over a ton. The first ever snooze alarm was also introduced. In 1958, when Star Lake was built, NASA was formed.
In 1962, when Olympic View Elementary was built, John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. and the Space Needle was completed for the 1962 World's Fair. In 1968, when Thomas Jefferson School was built, Apollo 8 was the first manned aircraft to orbit the moon.
And in 1971, when Illahee Middle School and Memorial Stadium were built, Texas Instrument released the first pocket calculator. Times have changed, and as a result, the learning needs, the careers we're preparing our scholars for, and the larger context has changed, and our buildings need to keep pace with that, and that's why it's important to think about that context.
So aging, deterring facilities and overcrowding, right? So like we talked about, 2 classes in 1 elementary building that are being with 2 teachers because we can't do anything else. Antiquated roof drain systems causing deterioration of brick columns at Illahee Middle School, and sinking foundations at Thomas Jefferson High School. Both of these are being addressed in the 2017 bond recommendation.
So I'm going to share with you some photos, and then after each, I'm going to have a couple of scholars who actually attend these schools to tell you their own personal experiences. So let's start with Thomas Jefferson. When you look in the photo, if you see the gentleman's boot, that's where the foundation is slipping, is dropping at the school site. The beams underneath the school are actually sinking. The custodian says that every year he has to replace hundreds of tiles in the school, and they're taping these tiles. So, and on the outside, those entrances, that's how scholars get into the classrooms. And with all those entrances, you have a safety concern. The buildings that are built now, Federal Way High School, you don't have all those entrances. So that if you were to have some type of a situation where you had, and unfortunately maybe someone who was threatening the school, they'd have all of these ways to get inside the building. The new buildings are designed in a much more safer manner. I'm going to have Mia Rosa, who is a junior at Thomas Jefferson, come up and quickly tell you a little bit about what life is like at TJ related to the facility.
My name is Mia Rosa, and I'm a junior at Thomas Jefferson. And some of the things, I just want to walk you through what I experience every day at school. So through my first class, it's been starting to rain a little bit more, and I walk to English. The covering of the hallways are very narrow, and everyone has to fit underneath. It's always a war to see if you can actually walk under cover, not in the rain. The pressure from the rain has bent them so far that it's a waterfall effect over the covering to where you have to walk to the next covering. So to get through this, you need to either walk in the rain or walk through this waterfall of complete just water falling down as fast as you can to get to your next class. The second you get into your class, the floors are slanted. My teacher asked me to open the window the other day, so I walked down to the window to open it back up because it's completely slanted. The weather is starting to get colder, and we no longer have heat. The pipes are completely eroded, and for this reason, our heaters no longer work. They even put in cold air every time we turn them on. It's safer to keep the heaters off than turn them on at this point. Thank you.
Illahee Middle School. Here's some images. So under the walkway, you can see you've got the ceiling is starting to crack. You have exposed piping. That middle picture is a picture of plumbing problems near a water faucet. And it's not that we're not fixing them, but at some point you can fix and fix and fix, and after a while you just can't repair it. That heater, you can see the corrosion, and then we're working on mold in the ceiling in one of the rooms at Illahee Middle School. I'm going to have Isabella come up. She's a student at Illahee. She can talk to you a little bit about what she sees at this site.
Hello, my name is Isabella Bogan, and I'm an 8th grader at Illahee Middle School. I'm kind of here to just tell you a little bit about what I experience every day going to school at Illahee. First of all, the bathrooms, the doors, most of the doors don't even lock. The water in the sinks are cold, and it's not pleasant to use at all, to the point where I don't even want to use them. In the locker rooms, there aren't enough working lockers for everyone. Items get stolen. I personally have had some of my items getting stolen because of the lack of working lockers, and the heating and cooling systems in the school. It's often either too cold or too warm in classrooms, and it distracts me personally from learning. Finally, the classroom sizes. The classrooms are small and the student body is growing, and the classrooms are so small there's not even enough room for all the students to sit at their desks comfortably, much less all of them walk around. So I think that getting a new campus could solve all of those problems and more problems. Thank you.
Totem Middle School. So if you look, you see a picture of the bathrooms.
The next second picture is a picture of a water fountain, and that back paneling is where they have worked on the plumbing over and over again, and they're patching up the wall, that second picture. You can also see more patchwork under that third middle picture with the garbage can. That wood paneling is hiding where some of the plumbing work has been happening there at Totem. And that's the gym. You see the crack in the foundation right beside the actual seats in the gym at Totem Middle School. I'm going to have Marcello, who's a student at Totem, come up and talk to you.
Hello, my name is Marcello Desimoni, and I'm an 8th grader, and I attend Totem Middle School. My main problems and concerns about the school are that there's no stalls in any of the bathrooms at our school. They have all been either taken down or busted in by students. And there's leaks everywhere in the school, causing technology disruptions in the library and kids to slip and fall in the hallway. And the boilers are constantly catching on fire and being worked on about maybe once or twice every other month, and is really disrupting class learning. And personally, this morning it happened again, and there was about 30-40 minutes of no class learning. Thank you.
I want to thank our scholars for coming and sharing their stories. I think sometimes you can hear about a bond and think about, okay, it's just buildings, but it's important to hear these stories with the photos to see that this isn't a luxury that we're talking about. We're talking about having schools that promote the learning that we want our children to have when they leave our systems ready for their futures. I've got some photos of Lake Grove Elementary. If you look at that first photo, this is where our maintenance department is adding piping outside to try to compensate for what they can't build in the natural structure. When you build buildings out of cinder, it's very hard to go back in and try to rewire or plumb some of these buildings. You can see teachers stacking things up because there's a lack of storage. And when you have portables, although people think portables are a way to mitigate it, they don't have bathrooms, and often what happens, scholars have to leave the portables to go back inside the building to use the restroom in the rain and all of those kinds of things. So portables are not long-term solutions. Mirror Lake, you can see they don't have, this isn't a building wired for technology. Remember, it was around when IBM first developed the computer. And so taking a projector, they're having to ad hoc this. See how the wires are coming from the ceiling? And so in our newer buildings, they're actually wired for this. You can see the roof and how it's starting to droop from leaking. Again, Olympic view, that leveler shows, if you were to look closely, how a teacher has a stand or on a cart on wheels, it just rolls because the foundation angles off. We've got a rotting beam. This is a Memorial Stadium. That middle picture is the actual announcer's booth, where because there's not proper heating, that you can start to see, and ventilation, the corrosion that's happening there. So this is just some pictures of some of what we see in our schools every day.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're overcrowded about 1,100 students. The buildings were built to serve 9,160 students. We currently have 10,263 in the K-5 buildings. We're growing at about a 1% rate a year, somewhere between 250 and 300 new students each year.
So we see the solution to this dilemma being a bond. We have aging, deteriorating facilities, and this $450 million bond will address it. It will address overcrowding. It will also ensure we have enhanced safety and security district-wide. I will tell you, if you were to go to Auburn, who just passed a $400 million bond to continue to renovate their schools, Kent passed their bond to renovate their schools, Highline, Tacoma, Fife, Renton, all of these districts have done this. I think we don't want to be the city that does not invest in our infrastructure and in our schools. What we're proposing are the rebuilds of these schools that we've listed: TJ, Totem, Illahee, Olympic View, Mirror Lake, Star Lake, Lake Grove, and Wildwood.
So when I talked about SCAP, so SCAP funding is what you get as from the legislature as additional funding that will allow us to also relocate Mark Twain. We have an agreement as the light rail will actually come down through the current Mark Twain property. So it's a property swap that will actually fund that as another building out of it and move to the park and ride that is on Pack Highway as part of that swap.
So when you think about a $450 million bond, we get an additional $100 million, and I'm estimating, from the state. With that money, we'll rebuild Mark Twain, and we'll do something
touch every other building that's not going to be rebuilt, doing something with the roofs, the boilers, safety and security. So every building will be touched as a result of this bond.
So getting district-wide benefits, we actually, as a board, had to approve in July a $15 million loan to take care of roofs and boilers, because we don't have SCAP funding like most districts do. We haven't passed a bond in 10 years, and so we're borrowing money and using taxpayers' dollars to pay interest against that borrowing, because we have no other option at this point to take care of the existing problems.
So some of our boilers, they're going out. That's why we have to borrow. There are some buildings that we know we can't rebuild, but we have to replace those boilers, because if they go out, that's a catastrophic failure that we'd have to then respond to. So one of the things you need to know, we have been working on this for over a year. A year ago, we had over 100 of our community members come together. They went and did school visits, that we had outside experts to rate each of our schools. They gave our schools a score, and based on those scores, here's some of the folks, the chief of police, chief church, all kinds of folks, community, parents, scholars were a part of this. Mike Park, Susie, we had a broad-based, Lynn Eglund, all of those folks were there. And I don't want to go into great detail other than to say we have a way to compute and rate each building, which gives us confidence that we've identified the next set of schools that we're going to be rebuilding and renovating. Here's the other thing to know. There was no land that we found. We spent a year and a half looking for land. So we're going to simply expand and make bigger all the schools that we have. Currently, our elementary schools hold about 450. We're going to expand their capacity to 600. And through this complete package, we're going to create additional capacity for almost 1,000 scholars. 48 additional classrooms, plus we're going to be able to serve more preschool scholars. I don't know if you know this, but Federal Way has the largest number of unserved preschoolers in the whole region. And we know that if we can get more of our preschoolers served early, we mitigate some of those challenges that happen later on.
So we have a four-phase approach to this, and so phase one was Federal Way High School. That was the end of phase one. We did a complete evaluation of what we considered with phase two. There was some movement, and based on the ratings we received, those are the schools that were picked to be put into this bond.
Right. So a successful bond package benefits everybody with the School Construction Assistance Program, and you've heard me talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to go into great detail, but what I want to do is talk about how we're going to do this without increasing taxes, because that's one of the big questions that were asked. It's a $450 million bond package that will maintain and not increase the total tax collection. And it's also structured so through the SCAP funds, we can support some of the schools in phase three. Again, our homeowners will continue to pay, an average homeowner will continue to pay $2.05 per thousand on assessed evaluation, and we've got it on the November 7th ballot. How are we able to do this? Well, currently the tax rates for Federal Way High School levy and the current school bonds total $2.05, and we're about to pay off the Federal Way High School levy. That is about to be paid off. We're also paying off and paying down our bonds from the phase one bond. So those two things together allow us to do this. So paying off the Federal Way High School levy, paying down phase one bonds allows us to do this and maintaining this at the current tax level. Let me go next. Sorry. So one of the things that we wanted to do was give you a long-term tax picture. And because of the McCleary legislation that just happened, we will be paying less in school taxes in Federal Way. So currently, we pay about $3.94 per thousand for our levy. Beginning in 2019, that goes down to $1.50. So the average homeowner in Federal Way in 2019 will be paying $2.44 less in their total education tax. The bond will maintain, but the levy that will continue to run will be at $1.50 or $2.44 less than what we've paid. So overall, we should see a diminishing or a lowering of the tax burden on the educational taxes for schools. And that will not only happen in Federal Way, but in other districts across the state as a result of the McCleary solution. So big ideas. We see this bond
To modernize schools, increase home values, and
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
This is different than what you've got.
Oh, is it really?
Yep.
Okay.
So great schools make great neighborhoods, right? It impacts all of us in our economic development.
And we also see this as a way to reduce overcrowding, to enhance improved safety, to modernize our learning environments, and to expand early learning opportunities. I think there's two of them. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I said. And then increase local job opportunities in construction industry as part of the construction and modernization. We're very focused on doing that as we do these buildings.
So, and I want you to know, when you think about asthma and how scholars learn, they don't learn in dark places that are crowded. That doesn't engage and ensure high quality learning. Also, when you think about asthma and allergies, really having buildings that have really good air quality lends itself towards a more healthy learning environment. So with that, I have one more statement, and I want Olivia to come up. Olivia is a scholar at Federal Way High School. She's going to talk to you a little bit about the journey of before Federal Way High School was remodeled until now. We'll wrap up.
So I'm Olivia Chung from Federal Way High School, and I'm a senior, and I actually had the privilege of going through all 3 stages of the rebuilding. So freshman year, I was in the old building, and I actually remember there being garbage cans in the middle of the hallways that we had to walk around just because of the leaks and cracks. And I also remember a lot of the projectors breaking down just because the school wasn't really built for technology. And I just remember how that really disrupted a lot of other scholars' learning, just because it's very hard to interact with the material that was given to us, and it's very hard for teachers as well to help us learn. And then, of course, the portable, we call it Portable City. Of course, the portables were better than the old school, but then again, like Dr. Tammy Kimball said, it's not a permanent solution. So then we get brought into the new school, and that gave us so much opportunity. We were given a lot of new technology like smart boards, and that helped us interact with the material better, and it gave a lot of teachers new ways to help us learn and create new learning styles for scholars within the school. As well as we brought in new technology for new programs such as engineering, gaming, coding programs, and robotics as well. We brought in a sports medicine program. So I feel like through the new school, I felt a huge transition with the opportunities that I was given, especially in my science classes as well. So just a new school and a new learning environment is really beneficial for scholars around the city. And I invite everyone, if they want, to come tour Federal Way High School, just because I feel like everyone should know what tax money is going into. And it's a really beautiful campus, and I feel like on behalf of all the scholars and educators there, we want to thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Great job, school district. Great job. Okay, now we're on to the pro-committee statement. Greg Brusso, spokesperson.
When do I get to ask a question?
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, General Public. What I want to do tonight is give you some excerpts from the pro statement that Susan Horan and myself actually crafted. So I'll give you some excerpts, and I want to make some statements about the bond itself. So voting yes for this bond addresses aging, deteriorating school facilities, overcrowding, and the need for enhanced safety district-wide. Time is now, and the need is urgent to begin addressing our facility needs. Across the district, 19 schools plus Memorial Stadium are 40 years or older. Our elementary schools are overcrowded by 1,000+ students, and enrollment is on the rise, as Jeffrey alluded to. Modernized, technology-enriched classrooms support future-ready students to become future scholars. We need more classrooms, and we need to start now. This funding addresses major maintenance needs, security enhancements at all sites, and relocation of Mark Twain Elementary. Great schools mean great neighborhoods and a prepared workforce. We believe in our community, our investment, their future. Our community. All of us here tonight represent our community. When I look around, I see business leaders, community leaders, parents, grandparents. But first and foremost, we are all citizens of Federal Way.
as Dr. Campbell alluded to in the McCleary decision, everyone knows about, January 5th, 2012. Fully fund basic education under state constitution, our paramount duty. This is our community, and we need to show the rest of the state that we are ready to do this duty. Send the message that we are doing our part in education of our children and beyond. Our investment. My daughter Leah attends Decatur as a junior. She will not benefit from this bond, but my wife and I, Sean and I, recognize the investment that we need to make in the rest of the students that will be there. Mayor Farrell and Dr. Campbell recently signed an MOU working to bring higher education institutions to Federal Way. Both Mayor Farrell and Dr. Campbell recognize important investment in our children, and those institutions recognize our investment not only in our city, but our children. These colleges that want to invest in our children need us as community and business leaders, as citizens, to also invest to assure their future. My daughter and I were talking one day about having a discussion about the importance of education. And she stated a quote from me from Benjamin Franklin. She said to me, "An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest." The investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. I thought, oh, smart girl. She's a product of Federal Way schools. But their future is what I'm talking about too. Our children's futures are dependent on decisions today. If we wait to approve this bond, we'll seal our children's futures to what is default. Some of you have heard me talk about and write about default futures. So by definition, default is a situation or condition that becomes the case because of the lack and absence of active intervention. Lack of active intervention. This is what I'm talking about. If we don't approve the bond, our children's default future continue on and on. Their futures are in our hands. Change the default and move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Greg. On the con committee statement, it is open. There is no con committee. Is there anybody here who would like to address the council and the community on the no? Okay. Anyone? All right, we'll also have the floor open for citizen comment starting now. So I've got two sheets for citizen comment. If you're interested in commenting on this, just let us know and we'll get a sheet filled out. Susie Horan first, and then Allison Taylor.
Hi, I'm Susie Horan. Thank you, Mayor, council members. So I was a member of the 100-person committee for the Facilities Planning Committee, and it was able to go through an over almost one-year process learning about our schools and what we needed to do. And I'm here today because I'm a citizen and I'm also a realtor in the area. And I have to say, my sons went to Nautilus Elementary School in the 80s. So when it was time to go out and visit our schools, I said, I'll go to Nautilus. And guess what, you guys? It was exactly the same as it was in the 1980s. And I loved it in the 80s, but I was appalled in the 2017. Here's the thing, these schools are dark, they're dreary, they're not healthy. You don't have a great learning environment when it's cold and wet and not healthy. The gymnasium at Nautilus is where the kids eat lunch. There's no windows, it's like a little square box. They open the doors, they roll out the food. It is not a great environment for learning and growing. We want our students to become great leaders in the future, and this is our opportunity to make it happen. How can they learn in an environment that's not intolerable? We're sitting in this beautiful, beautiful building. We went to the Performing Arts Center, and our students are in dreary, colorless settings. This is our opportunity to do something about it. As a realtor,
I meet people that don't want to move into the city of Federal Way because it's heard they don't have good schools here. We need to change that. Dr. Campbell wants to change that. We have got to make this city where people want to live. We need to make schools so we get good scores, and that's healthy environments. There is an investor that buys homes all over the United States. They pay cash for them, and they rent them to people who want to pay rent to live in a nice facility. They will not buy homes in the city of Federal Way because our school scores are not high enough. They buy homes in Kent, they buy homes in Puyallup, they buy homes in Tacoma, all the cities that Dr. Campbell said recently passed their ballot. So I urge you today that you give a positive recommendation unanimously that we support this proposition being voted in. It will not raise taxes, but our students deserve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie. Allison Taylor.
Good evening, Council. I do a little politicking in this city these days. I'm a social worker for the state of Washington, but prior to that, I got my master's degree in education. I'm a fifth-generation teacher. I have a great-grandfather that was a professor at Berkeley. There's nothing more important in this world than our children. I moved here 4 years ago Sunday to Washington. I went to a high school in California that just celebrated our 100th year. I went to these schools. I went to schools that had horrible bathrooms and no heat and portable city. That's most of California, is portable city. And then I moved to Washington, and I went to the Democratic caucus last year at Decatur, and I saw 2 portables, and I thought, please tell me kids do not go to school in these things. Only for people to say, no, they absolutely go to school in these things. It disgusts me that these schools have been allowed to be this way when we have a $100 million PAC, as people want to call it, sitting on that hill. It makes me sad that anybody would not support this. As I've watched this presentation with these amazing scholars, I saw people appear to be sleeping up there, appear to be on their phones or paying attention to other things. There's nothing more important to our city than the children of our community. So you guys have a unique position because you guys decided to put this on the agenda, and I realize that you didn't have to, and I'm not sure who did. But thank you to who did. But I hope and I expect that you will come back with a recommendation to support this, because there is absolutely not a single person speaking against it in this room. Nobody submitted anything that was in the negative, so I would assume that everybody up on that panel would be supportive of our children, would be supportive of this bond that is not going to cost a single additional cent at this point to our homeowners. And I just hope that you guys do the right thing tonight, because at the end of the day, I came from a school that was just like this, and it would have been so nice and so life-changing to be able to go to the school that opened up the year after I graduated, which is a brand new, beautiful school that to me said, we believe in this community and we believe in the students that go here. So I really hope that you guys do the right thing and don't take a negative look at this, and don't abstain from a vote, but vote to support this, because I think that it's absolutely mandatory in this community.
All right. Councilmember Duclos.
Superintendent Campbell? I just want to make sure that people understand.
Thank you.
This does not increase people's taxes. It's simply a continuation of what we've been paying all along, correct? That's correct. And the other thing, would this eliminate those crummy portables? Yeah. Thank you so much. Not totally, but we would start. Well, we'd start to do that, because the last time I was there and I saw the kids in the portables, I knew we needed to do something. Thank you.
All right. H. David Kaplan. And anybody else who would like to talk, please let us know.
I hadn't intended to speak this evening because I don't have children in schools and I didn't know anything about it. That's why I sat through it. Susie Horan picked the right word, appalled. I'm absolutely appalled that Dr. Campbell's predecessors and the previous school boards allowed these conditions to go on for so many years before they brought this bond measure to the public. It's absolutely disgraceful. This should have been done 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What the hell was everybody doing during these years to allow our schools to be in this awful condition? And it's absolutely essential that you vote to support this bond measure, and everybody in the city votes to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, H. David. Stephanie, can you please explain, there's been a request by a council member to explain, how did we go about trying to reach someone from the con or the no campaign, or how did we try to reach out?
We contacted King County Elections, and they're the ones who everything is funneled through. So they gave us the names of the people on the pro committee and a con committee, and they did not have anybody sign up for a con committee or submitted to the voters pamphlet.
And did we advertise on the agenda for?
This was in a legal notice in the newspaper, actually, on the city website and downstairs on our papers.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah, Councilmember Copain wanted to make sure that point was clear. Okay, all right, so is there anybody else from the public that would like to talk? All right, hearing none. Oh, Betty Taylor, come on up.
So I attend all city council meetings, and I don't attend school board meetings. I attend some, but not all. But hearing about the bond and the public comment, I would expect for this whole room to be filled. I mean, this is a very important issue, a very important topic, and I feel that there should be more citizen comment, more backup, because the presentation was excellent. It was an excellent presentation. The conditions of the school they're real, but like Mr. just said, why has this been going on for such a long time, and it should have been done years ago instead of 2017. But it needs to be more people in this room supporting this bond and giving public comment, because this is affecting our students. You know, like mode in schools, kids get sick, asthma. I mean, really, digestive systems. I mean, immune systems are affected. I mean, some kids can't even be in environments. You talk about health and disease, and you talk about hazardous conditions and all this stuff, and you're breathing this into your nostrils, and it's making you sick. I mean, you go to school sick. You come home sick. I mean, and then you wonder, where are the kids? Why don't they come to school? They're sick. They cannot be in this environment. This is terrible. This is really terrible. The more I think about it, it's sick.
All right, thank you, Betty. All right, is there anybody else? All right, thank you. Council discussion. Council, any discussion on this? I see Councilmember Moore and then Councilmember Salsky.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to dive right in. Thank you to all those that spoke so eloquently and passionately. I sincerely appreciate that, and I think it's very important. First and foremost, I have to thank one of my colleagues on the City Council that took the leadership and put this through, and that's Councilmember Mark Copain. So I want to thank you for seeing the value in this and pushing this through. I think that's really important. You know, we've in the last few months, we have all talked about partnering up with our schools. And to me, this is what it looks like. Bringing these type of issues up and holding hand in hand with the school district and saying, we're behind you. And tonight, I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that we will see that. You know, I often talk about how I was an AmeriCorps member in the Federal Public Schools. I worked at the old Lakota, and I went to school at the old Lakota Junior High, now middle school. And I am also a product of the Federal Public Schools. And, you know, our schools reflect the type of community we are. And when I drive around in our community, I want to see incredible looking buildings, to put it in a simple way. I want to see buildings that are of energy use. I want to know that these buildings have been built by working families within our community and outside. And I, more importantly, want to know that when I drive past that school, that our kids are learning not only in a safe environment, but in a healthy environment, as you've heard in many of our speakers. I'm going to be voting in favor of this, and it's a no-brainer for me, quite frankly. And I'm proud of the fact that we're doing this. And I think this is an example of us walking the talk. And this is the beginning of a new path, a new relationship with our school district. And so I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this, not just for our sake, but for the sake of our scholars, and for the sake of our families, and for the sake of our community. I think is really, really important. And last, I want to end by thanking our scholars. I know it's not an easy task to speak in front of us. I've been intimidated before. When I spoke at the councils back in the very early 2000s, and they did an incredible job. They did a great job of speaking, and I appreciate that a lot. With that, Mr. Mayor, I will also end by saying thank you to Jeffrey, our school board president. It's been great to talk with him and to learn more about this. And of course, thanks to Greg. I'm not sure where I see him, but there he is. Thank you for your leadership in chairing this campaign. And thank you to Dr. Tammy Campbell for your leadership in our district and inspiring many of our scholars. I definitely sense a different atmosphere, environment under your leadership. And I think that's really is important. Some of it is uncomfortable, but it needs to be uncomfortable to recognize the change that's coming. And to Susie, thank you for your words. I really appreciate it. And to all, thank you so much for coming up here and speaking and being passionate.
Okay, the list in order of people who turned on their microphones: Councilmember Selsky, Councilmember Asefa Dawson, Councilmember Kopang, Councilmember Duclos, and then the Deputy Mayor. All right, Councilmember Selsky.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for your parts in the presentation here this evening. I do have a question about one of the slides. If we could go back to that slide, please. The one that talks about the estimated change in taxpayer obligation.
This one?
Yes, that one right there. This actually was a question I had coming into this evening. So it looks like the very top line there, educational programs and operations levy. I think of that as, in addition to education, but operations and maintenance. So that's what the, no?
No, that's not. That's what we pay for things like special education. So our levies, we pass levies. That's how we actually fund some of our programs. And so bonds build, levies are for learning. And we have not passed a bond since 2007. And at that time, the voters rejected it. And so the levies we've had to have, because that's, and we will run a levy in February. And that's something that has been an ongoing commitment from communities all over the state, and Federal Way has committed to that. The good news, though, is that the taxpayers will not pay as much for levies anymore because we're going to be collecting less. So in 2018, that amount is $3.94 per thousand. But because of the McCleary solution, in 2019, our taxpayers will be paying $1.50 per thousand. So you'll see a decrease to the tune of $2.44 on the program and operations levy.
Right, I understand that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with regard to the normal operations and maintenance of the buildings, you know, operations, teacher salaries, I mean, put it all together, that's what I think of that as.
Yeah.
Like in a business, for example.
So our levies have paid for salaries for our staff. That's what we've been paying for out of that special education, basic education. That's why that we needed to pass the McCleary solution, because school districts were funding basic education through levies, and that was disproportionate all across the state. And here in Federal Way, because we were property poor, we were paying more than most taxpayers. The McCleary solution has given some answers to that, but this is how we paid for basic education in the past.
Right. Okay, so from a taxpayer standpoint, what I'm getting at is, what is the percentage of what a taxpayer pays for schools? What percentage is normal operations and maintenance, and what it is capital improvement with bonds and levies for facilities? That's really what I'm getting.
So the only levy that we have right now that the taxpayers are paying for is Federal Way High School, and they're paying off bonds from the Phase 1 construction. So that's
Right,
the bond
right, I
portion.
understand.
And then the levy portion that we collect has been paying for basic education, teacher salaries, para salaries, running of our schools, not the capital part.
Right.
So,
And so that's the top line up there, right?
right.
Okay, and so what I see, that's, for 2017, that's roughly $4 out of $6.32. So really, about 60% is for operations,
The main M&O.
right? And then about 40% roughly is for capital projects.
Yes, for the short term for Federal Way High School.
For now, for 2017.
Right.
Right.
So most districts are, when I talk to my peers in Lake Washington, Renton, they run continuous bonds. That's how they don't get these buildings in the shape that they've been in. So Lake Washington will continue to run a bond because you have to keep an ongoing plan for maintaining your buildings. We have not done anything to most of our buildings for 10 years. And so that's what happened. And to speak about my predecessors, they did put a measure on the ballot in 2007 that wasn't passed. So I wasn't here, but I will just say that I know that there was a measure, but we have not passed a bond since 2007.
Right, understand. Okay, so let's move over to 2019 now. And this is something I haven't seen before, and I think this is very enlightening. In 2019, now the educational programs levy
Will decrease.
decreases to $1.50 out of $3.88 for the total. So in other words, the proportion of the normal maintenance operations is really reduced compared to what it is right now. It's reduced substantially.
It will in 2019.
In
There will be
19.
a spike for every person around the state in 2018 because it's the part of the McCleary solution. But then from 2019 on, all of Federal Way will pay less for our levies.
And we're paying less, but not every school district around the state
No,
will be
but-
paying less.
but-
It's a
but
reality.
some will, and some
Right.
won't.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, I have one other question. So that, I want to get to the $2.05 per thousand of assessed value.
Sure.
Is that a fixed number or is that a floating number?
That's for the average homeowner. If your home, there is a portion of our community, if their home value increases beyond the average, there will be a slight increase. I don't know have those numbers in my head, but the average homeowner will continue to pay $2.05 per thousand.
Okay, and so how does increased property value influence that? Because everybody's in the city, it seems like property value is going up, just like everywhere in the region.
But that's the average. So there will be an average increase, and if it increases on the average, they will not pay more because we're still collecting a finite amount. It's not like we're just going to keep collecting. We have a finite amount that we're going to collect, and so that average amount should stay reasonably fixed.
Okay, so it's a delta from the average. If your home goes up more than that average, you're going to
Slightly
see
more.
some.
But just because it goes up doesn't mean that they're going to pay more. If that's the average increase, they will still pay the $2.05 because we're collecting a fixed amount. It's not like we're just going to increase our collection based on that. We have a certain amount and we're not going to collect more than that.
Therefore, the total collection.
Right.
Okay. Okay, this is
seeing that right there has been very important for me tonight. Okay.
Well, this is a larger picture, and it was important for me to add it because I think it's important to know the total education collection is going to decrease over time, and we need our community to know that. And as we go out for our levy that maintains some of our other educational programs, that we're going to be collecting less, and it's important to let our taxpayers know that as well.
Well, and what really has been enlightening to me is that 2019, that the operations and maintenance as a total of the total collected is actually reducing substantially.
If you looked in the Seattle Times, they've posted this. It's been up. When the McCleary solution came out in July and August, there were a lot of newspapers that listed, and Federal Way was one of them where they actually shared this information. But now that we're getting our information as well, we're confirming it to be true.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Councilmember Sefadowson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. When President Jeffrey talked to me and then Bruce spoke to me, I willingly said yes, I will support it. My kids went to school here, and Caleb especially was involved in last ballot measure, and he actually was on TV showing what Federal Way looked like, Federal Way High School, how bad it was. And so actually when we transferred there, my first thing is, do you guys really want to go to school here? It's miserable, it's horrible, and I'm glad they went to school here, by the way. And so although they don't benefit from going to the new school, they go there a lot when they're around, and so they still see the outcome and the fruit of what the new generation is appreciating. And so thank you for that. And then I look forward to all these other schools being built and upgraded. The kids do need it. And as an employee of King County Housing Authority, one thing that the Housing Authority has allowed residents, section holders, voucher holders to do is move to the east side to higher achieving schools. And to me, that's either looking at the facility and not even giving our schools opportunity to do better, to improve, and to show that we can do better. And so I had mixed feelings about that, but if people want to go somewhere, because we all also want our kids to do better, and so their perception is there, and so I think this would change that perception about our school here in Federal Way. And it's also, for me personally, it's deepening my own understanding around social justice. And so how does this play out, and how does my knowledge or my position here play out when it comes to social justice and how it serves our students, our youth, because that's the next generation that's coming up. So thank you very much, and I look forward to moving forward with this opportunity. So thank you.
All right, Councilmember Kopang.
Thank you, Mayor. As a city council, we really don't have any direct engagement in what's going on in the school board, what's going on in the school district. So taking the effort that we are tonight to talk about this bond and come to a decision on whether we want to support it or not as a council really is more about leadership and partnership. We were elected to this position to be leaders in the city. And as leaders, we can choose the subjects that we believe are most important to move our community forward. And to my mind, partnering with the school district by supporting them in this bond effort is one of those things that we can do. And I think it really does reflect well on us as a community that we value our children. We value their future. And, my kids have graduated from high school, so I don't have a personal interest in the school portion of this, but I have a heart issue here that I want to see our kids move forward and have the environment they need to be able to learn effectively and create a good future for themselves. I think for us as a city not to move forward in supporting this really would say something about us that I would definitely be disappointed in hearing, and that's that there's not enough care and concern for the environment that we're creating for the generation that's coming behind us. And I could not sit by and not say something as a member of the council to support the plan of the school district to improve our schools and to improve schools
throughout the school district. This is not isolated. This is throughout the school district. So every student in the school district will be positively affected. The fact that the revenue is neutral is a plus for me. I would have paid more. I want to see our schools be the best they can be. And I think that has a positive effect on us in many, many ways. And I won't go into them tonight, but to say I hope that we as a council can get behind this 100%. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Duclos.
Or Copang, whichever you prefer. When I first moved here, I remember first meeting Terry Hickle holding a sign to pass a school bond. And people were out here all the time doing that. And we did pass the bonds because people in this community care about our schools. When new people are looking to move to a city, especially young people, one of the first things they look at is the school district and the school system and what it's like, and are their kids going to be good if they go to that school? And I think that's what attracts young families here, and I think we need to attract more young people into our city. So I believe this council will vote unanimously to support the bond. It's not raising people's taxes, and I think that's something that needs to be made very clear to people out there, because they'll see, oh, this is a new tax. No, it isn't. It's a continuation. So I think we've been good in this community in supporting it, but the community has changed over the years, and I'm hoping that they will, especially if they realize it doesn't increase our taxes, but it helps our kids. It really does, and it helps us attract new families here to this city. So I have great faith that this council will all support this. I know I will.
Great. Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the wonderful presentations that were made earlier. They were very informative. My husband and I moved to Federal Way with our oldest daughter back in around 1969. So that's about 48 years ago. So we've seen a lot of ups and downs in our community. We've always supported the schools. We've always understood that for a community to thrive, the schools have to thrive as well. And hearing from our scholars this evening about some of the conditions, those conditions have to be very disruptive to the learning process, and they're really very costly to our community. They're costly to our children's futures, to our community's futures. I won't go into detail about some of the more negative things we've observed in some of the past years in attitudes towards supporting the schools. When we moved here, the schools had a very good reputation, and that was one of the reasons we chose Federal Way, in addition to the outstanding natural beauty that continues to exist here. But we do have a very generous community now. We have a very caring community, and I certainly will be supporting this resolution. I think it's essential for maintaining the quality of our whole community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Honda.
Thank you very much. I have some questions for Dr. Campbell. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight and waiting to talk to us. Phase 3 and Phase 4, when would those occur?
We have not mapped that out yet. We've talked about how this could play out, but we really need to see how timing works with this next phase. So I don't want to give you an answer tonight, but we would then have a plan to think about how we would be proceeding.
I have two real concerns with some of the schools listed in Phase 3, and one is Decatur.
I know.
And I know I've talked to you about this.
I know.
I would like to see that, my kids graduated from there in 2000 and 2002, and it was awful then.
Yep.
It's worse now.
Yep.
And when we talk about dark rooms and
know.
not being able to learn, and that school, if this is how, can you give me an estimate about how long you think it'll be before you are even going to be at phase 3, which Decatur's listed as?
So it'll take us, when you think about maybe 5 to 8 years to get all of the build out done. And I'm throwing out a number because we've not mapped this out. So my folks in construction would probably kill me for doing that. But once that's mapped out, the other thing that that's important to the community that everyone's talking about, and I do appreciate Councilmember Kopang saying you'd be willing to pay more, because once you start to pay this off, we'd have to be thinking about what's the package we'd bring back out to the community that the community could stomach in terms of taxes. And so Decatur, for example, was initially in phase 2 and TJ was in phase 3. But when we actually looked inside the building and looked at the actual infrastructure, Decatur was in better shape. So once we build out, we'll start to build together and put together another package to talk about funding that phase 3 piece. And I'd be more than willing to sit down and talk to you about it, but I don't want to wing it right now because I've not gotten enough details to do that.
So phase 3 and phase 4 are 2 more bond issues.
They are. They have to be. We have a debt ceiling of $500 million, so we can never borrow more than that. And so we're getting the maximum that we can right now. But it took us a decade to get into this situation, and it's going to take us more than one bond measure to get out of it. More than the other reason, you can only build so fast, because what we will do is we have portables where Taft Academy was that we can then host some schools while their school is being rebuilt. And for example, TJ will have to do portables right on the site and start to build then. So you have building schools takes time, and you have to pace all of that out.
Thank you for that. And Mark Twain is a huge concern of mine. If this passes, there would be enough funding along with the land swap to rebuild Mark Twain.
Through our school construction assistance program, which is SCAP funds, that's how we're paying for Mark Twain.
And would that be the first building that's constructed?
Will it be? We have not nailed down the sequence yet.
Okay.
We've got some plans that we've started to flesh out, but we have not finalized those yet.
If this doesn't pass, then what happens?
We'll run it again in February.
Okay.
We have to. We don't have a choice. And the other thing, if it doesn't pass, what probably happens, if that continues, we'll have to drop some of the schools because the costs are continuing to rise. Inflation continues to rise, which means it'll cost us more to do it. So that's the other impact. But we will not stop running the bond. Highline ran theirs 3 times until they passed it. To stop would mean that it's okay that we're 1,000 scholars over. To stop would mean that we've magically got a place to house them. We'll run it again.
So if this doesn't pass, what then happens with Mark Twain? Do they stay at that site?
They'll have to stay there until we can pass the bond.
Thank you.
I just want to add one other comment. So from a legislative perspective, K-3 class sizes need to be 1 to 17. Without this bond, we can never get there, which means we're going to lose funding from the legislature if we don't have that 1 to 17 by 2020. So not only do we have the impact of not having buildings, the funding we get to take care of our school district will decrease because we're not 1 to 17 in the K-3 environment. So that's another impact.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Councilor Duclos?
Jeffrey or Tammy, I think that's something that needs to be out in the public when we're working to get this to pass. Let them know that.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Burbridge, do you have a motion?
I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to my favorite table that we talked about up there that shows 2019 versus 18 and 17. You don't have to put it up again. Okay. I just have a general question about that. You mentioned that the funding in 2019 will be impacted by this McCleary decision. Are we to the point now where we can count on that? We know what's happened with the legislature and they're, passing or trying to get through this business. Can we count on that?
It's in law. I mean, it's
Okay.
been published. I would imagine it's a result of the Supreme Court ruling. So I would imagine we would be counting on that.
And I do know the legislature did come up with a plan this year, so this is based off of that action by the legislature.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to also follow up on Councilmember Kopang's idea about partnerships. One of the things that I think would be important to do, you know, one of the things that I'm doing as superintendent, I've decided that once a month I'm going to sub in a classroom. And I've asked all my leadership team to sub in a classroom. I think it'd be powerful if once or twice a year as council members, you walk with board members to go in some of our schools and see what's happening in our schools. I think sometimes people don't understand what's happening in the schools and how hard our staff are working and who's there. I think it'd be powerful to take a couple of you at a time to walk through, to pick 2 or 3 schools, and we walk and you actually see what's happening in the buildings where our future lives.
Councilmember Duclos, then Councilmember.
I just want to follow up on that. I did have an opportunity to do that in the schools, not last year, but the year before. I was asked to go to speak to some of the classes. I went to some elementary schools and observed and talked to them, and I went to junior high school. And I was in portables.
Yep.
As well as the others. And it was, you know, I just couldn't figure out how the kids could really learn in these situations. And so that's why I'm 150% behind this, and I'm hoping that our community will be behind it also.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Duclos.
Councilmember Moore and then Councilmember Kopang.
Dr. Campbell, you rock. I think I read that in the paper that you're going to be subbing. I think that's absolutely extraordinary. I think all elected officials, quite frankly, should sub, not just visit a classroom or walk with you guys, but honestly, we need to sub. So I'm going to have a sign-up sheet.
Let's start with visits.
No, no.
Sign me, I'm ready. Let's do it.
But here's the thing. In all seriousness, I mean, I'm serious.
I was going to wait till tomorrow to send you that email. But.
Yeah, no, I'm serious because.
Hey, in undergraduate school, I got a teaching certificate, and I taught in schools, so I know what it was like back then. And today, it's got to be 10 times worse.
Well, but you know, there's a lot that we can learn. You know, I mean, I've subbed as well, and there's a lot that I've learned. And you know, I know that there are elected officials that do sub, and if you want us to learn what's going on, let's not just walk the classroom. Let's actually sub, because the reality is this: you guys are looking for substitutes, right? So, you know, I think that's something that we ought to do. You know, so yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Great idea. Yeah. Councilmember Kopang.
One of my favorite things to do when my kids were growing up was reading Dr. Seuss to them at bedtime. And since I've been elected, I've had the opportunity to go to Olympic View and read Dr. Seuss to the students there, and really have enjoyed that. And I think, you know, walking through Olympic View, you can see it's showing its age.
It is.
It was old when I used to go to Twin Lakes. We talked about how old Olympic View was. So anyway, it's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Jeffrey. Council, were there any other comments? Okay. Deputy Mayor Burbidge, do you have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to come up and address? Okay. Oh, you're welcome. We'll get a yellow sheet later.
I am very sorry that I had all the really wrong idea about the schools in Federal Way. My school, I started school in 1945, and it was an old school then, and it is still standing today back in Minnesota. And I just thought that when they wanted to put in new schools here, it was just a boondoggle to give construction contracts to their buddies. I really did, and I'm sorry about that. I had no idea
that there were mold issues and leaky ceilings and things in our schools here. That's despicable. That's horrible. They should be maintained, or built. But I just wanted to say, maybe there's a lot of people like me who thought this was, what do we need new schools for? And by the way, why did we build another library when it was a new library to begin with? I mean, it looked new anyway. I don't understand. It seems like it's corruption. And I'm sure now I hear from these kids of the horrible situations they're in, but I think you have to educate the voters really as to what it is, and then what does that do to our house values if you're saying that the Federal Way schools have mold and have waterfalls and not enough electrical technology in them. I mean, it's just like a catch-22. Anyway,
Would you please tell us your name?
My name is Patricia Schultz, and I live in Twin Lakes.
Thank you very much, Patricia.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Deputy Mayor Burbridge, do you have a motion?
I do. I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second regarding closing the public meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed. Deputy Mayor Burbridge.
Okay, I move approval of the prepared resolution in support of the Federal Way School District number 210, ballot proposition number 1.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second to approve the City Council support of this bond measure. Councilor Barselsky, did you?
Yes, I do have some further comments. Thank you, Mayor Farrell. I thank you all for your input tonight and the presentation. It was well put together. I learned some things. I did a lot of research coming into tonight, and there was something that enlightened me, and that was what I referred to as the table. But there are a couple things I do want to mention, and I think we can't forget about as well. To start with, I refer back to a Seattle Times article that was published in the newspaper on April 30th of this year, and the title of the article is "Property Tax Bills in King County Jump Again Among the Highest in the U.S." And it basically says that King County taxpayers, of which we're a part, are paying tax increases at alarming rates, and a lot of it is because of property values that are going up, and some of it is because of new property or new taxes that are coming about for new projects. And so I know personally my taxes have gone up substantially in the last 3 years, and like I say, the article said about 35% since 2013. And again, assessed values, as I mentioned, are going up. And just looking at what I see, another 10% again for 2018. So there's implications there. There's implications there on that. We all know what happened with the Sound Transit vote when we opened up our registrations for our vehicles and the excise tax. That shocked us. And so that's another thing that is disturbing. I mean, and so we just have to look at that as well. I mean, that's got to be considered in some of this. Looking back, I graduated from Federal Way High School back in the 70s, and that's when levy and bond failures were commonplace. I lived through that. When I went into that school as a student, I could see that it was dilapidated and it needed a replacement actually way back then. And so what happened, I equate the failures of these bonds and levies that occurred back then to the Boeing bust. I mean, Boeing, the loss of Boeing business and what happened with Boeing caused immense problems.
it caused problems for families. They couldn't afford to pay for taking care of their family as well as bonds and levies. It was an economic situation that happened, and I don't think we can forget that history. Right now, we're really enjoying the economic growth. We are, and it's wonderful. A lot of people are feeling prosperity, but there are others really who aren't. And so I'm concerned, like I just talked about, what if we have another relapse of what happened with the Boeing bust in 1970 or in the 70s, or what happened 10 years ago with the Great Recession, where people were losing their jobs left and right. And so, you know, if we have a repeat of that, it's going to be tough for people. I understand this bond is a replacement bond. You explained it quite well, what's going on with this, and I'm really encouraged by that McCleary decision. That will actually, as we've seen on that table, reduce taxes of our families and property owners starting in 2019. That's not that far away, really. You know, in the end, I personally feel it's up to every voter to make their own decision, because every voter is in a different situation. I will tell you, I came into this meeting with a different mindset tonight, but with your presentation, with the support of the students that came in and talked, and the citizens that have talked, and of course the famous table, with the McCleary decision impact on that, I'm going to vote yes for this proposition.
All right. Councilmember Cephedos.
Just
Oh,
waiting
okay,
to vote.
your light was on. Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about old schools, because I went to an old school in Tacoma that is 112 years old, I think, right now, and I got a great education. And I think an education doesn't. I think a great education doesn't have to be in a brand new school. It can be the parents, the staff, the community, and the kids make for a great education. You need a building that's okay, but I don't always think you need a brand new building to have a great education. When the Federal Way Public Academy was open, my daughter was there for the first 2 years, and we were in portables. Their lunchroom for the first year was a tent outside, and it only had 3 sides. And during the course of the year, the other sides blew away, and it was cold. And those kids did absolutely amazing. You know, they tested at the top of the district. I'm in the schools. I go to read to the kids. I'm at Federal Way High School every week with the Kiwanis Club, the Key Club there. And the new Federal Way High School is really a beautiful school. And the kids seem very happy. And what I would say is that we do need good schools to attract good businesses here, new businesses and new residents. I've heard the same thing that Mrs. Horan has heard, that people are bypassing Federal Way. They're looking at our scores for our schools. Some real estate agents have told me that people are driving by schools in neighborhoods where they are thinking of purchasing a house and have decided not to purchase a house here in Federal Way. So I certainly don't disagree that we need new buildings. But I would just say, I've heard this from a lot of different people. I don't think you need a brand new building to have a great education. A great education depends on many, many things, but the kids who aren't going to be in these brand new buildings are still going to get a good education. They have to. You know, we can't have kids in Federal Way getting awesome, great educations because they're in a new building, and then the ones whose buildings aren't new, such as Decatur, they're still getting a good education. And I think that has to be said more often than the message that some people are getting, that you can only get a good education if you're in a new building.
I'm sorry, Dr. Campbell, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Actually, hold on for a second. Council, would you want to hear from Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Campbell, come on up.
And then
We
I-
do have sorry,
I do understand procedure.
but let's let the council member finish.
Okay.
And then we'll have, but stay close.
Okay.
Okay. I can't say, all right.
No, I want to hear what she says, because I think it's really important that people get the message that every child in Federal Way is going to get a great, good education. And that's really important.
Well, as they say in the other Washington, the gentlewoman yields her time to the superintendent. All right.
So one of the things that we know that we are doing in Federal Way, we've got a new strategic plan. We've adopted new curriculum. We're starting STEM lighthouse regions. We are doing all of that. I can't spend my time talking about that and not make the case for the schools. So we're sort of caught, right? How do you make the case that you need a bond? Or do you not make the case and people don't understand the need? But we've got a plan. Every classroom, every place in the district, high-quality learning, high-quality instruction. We can't rebuild all the schools at the same time, and I agree with you. A new school without really good instruction, really good parent partnerships that will not be the big difference maker. But I can tell you, you can have really good teachers, high-quality instruction, leaky roofs, cold bathrooms, no heating, all of those things. We're not comfortable in those environments, and our young people are not comfortable in those environments, and we know that that's not what we want for our children.
When my kids were at Decatur, sometimes they had blankets around them because it was so cold. Yet they still got a good education. So I just want people to know you can still get it. I know what you're saying. I'm sure we're all hearing what you're saying, but
Yeah.
so anyway, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, was there council, anybody else? Okay, there's been a motion and a second and a very good discussion. Any other comments?
Call the question.
I think, exactly. You've been dying to say that. All right, the question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The matter passes unanimously. All right, that's great. So now we're on to the council reports. Great job, everybody. That was a great presentation, and I think that a great education that we all received on that. Great job, everybody. Thank you, Susan. Jeffrey and Tammy, thank you. Everybody, thank you. All right, let's start actually with Councilmember Duclos on the council reports.
I'll be very brief. The next meeting of the Finance, Economic Development, and Regional Affairs Committee is next Tuesday, the 26th at 4:30 in the Hylabos room.
Very good. All right, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the people that were here, and thank you to my colleagues for that unanimous stand for our schools and for our community. I think that's really important. I do want to take about 15, just kidding. Just making sure we're all awake up here. But I have to say thank you to the Washington CAN group for coming today. They did come to the Human Services Committee some time ago, about a month or two ago, I think, if I recall correctly, and started a dialogue with us as a committee. And I appreciated them then, and I appreciate them now. And I really do think that that this is a serious issue. I have been really fortunate that as a renter, I've had good responses and good relations in the apartments that I've been at, but no one, absolutely no one, everybody deserves to live in a quality place. I think that's important. I think the city ought to look at mechanisms that would hold our landlords accountable because this is an issue of right and wrong. And I think this is a human being dignity issue. And I think that's is extremely important. So, Mr. Mayor and to my colleagues, there is an ordinance that I want to look at. And I look forward to working with the mayor and the legal department to look into that because, we need to make sure that we ensure that all residents within our city limits have a quality space to live in because that's right. It's simple. And so I'll look forward to the conversations and the legalities with that as well. So that's all I will say, Mr. Mayor, and I will end my report.
All right, Councilmember Kopang.
We had a busy couple of weeks. I just want to hit on a few high spots here. The 9/11 Memorial was put on by the fire department, and South King County Fire and Rescue does a great job with that. They've got a beautiful memorial there for those of you in the community that have not been there. It's the station 64, which is on 320th on the east side of I-5. But great. I mean, the speaker was exceptional this year. Actually, rather than being a firefighter, he's actually one of the people that was working in the buildings, and he talked about his experience. That was a perspective I'd not heard in that environment before, so very, very moving. Obviously enjoyed the PAC Gala, but I wanted to call attention to Center Stage, and just let everyone know that they've got a new artistic director, Trista Duvall. They've got triple the number of season ticket sales this year over last year, and I was one of them. I'm looking forward to supporting Center Stage. I think the PAC is going to be phenomenal, and looking forward to supporting that as well. But there was some concern, I think, that Center Stage would get forgotten with the PAC opening, and I just want to say evidence would support another conclusion. Triple the sales certainly says something about the support that the Center Stage has now, and I appreciate that. The last thing I want to talk about was something that we all hear, and that's airplane noise. I took time out of my last week to attend the Quiet and Healthy Skies Task Force, the mayor impaneled to take a look at what's going on at the airport and how it is impacting the city of Federal Way. And I can say that they are doing a very thorough job in their research and providing input to the mayor and the council as we entertain options to move forward in addressing the issues. And so anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to those gentlemen that have been working so hard to put together a report for us as a community to look at. So that concludes my report.
All right, Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Federal Way Domestic Violence Task Force. We meet on the fourth Friday of every month here from 12 to 1:30. And I've been a member of the group for several years now, as well as the King County Domestic Task Force. And I just want to really thank people who go every day and work with victims and hear their stories and try to help them out of their situations. It's sometimes really sad and really scary, and these are people I really admire because they go and do this every single day, and it takes a special kind of person to do that. I'd also like to talk about the Mother and Children's Homeless Initiative. We continue to meet. Last week we enlisted commercial real estate broker Mark Freitas. He's a citizen here in Federal Way who has done a lot of work in Federal Way with nonprofits and social services. He is going to help us find a space. We're working with Mary's Place out of Seattle at this point, and we need a space which is 10 to 20,000 square feet to have a homeless shelter for women and children and families that would offer either really low rent or no rent for up to 2 years. And Mary's Place would come in and do some renovations. So Mark was walking down the stairs. We noticed him. We asked him into our meeting, and he has already found a couple buildings that he's looking at and talking to the owners, and hopefully sometime soon we can have shelter for children and families here in Federal Way. Camp Kilworth has been something that's been very important to my family for a number of years. We've been involved in Boy Scouts for years, and Camp Kilworth has been a part of that. If you've never been to Camp Kilworth, you're really missing out. It's a part of Federal Way that's absolutely beautiful. It's very hilly, and it has, it's on the water. There's a lot of stairs that go down to the water, though, so you just don't walk out to the water. Now that the foundations, there's two Kilworth foundations, are taking over the property from the Boy Scouts, it is my hope and my dream that somehow the city can purchase the property and keep it in its natural state that the Scouts have kept it in for so many years, and use it for not only the youth in Federal Way, but King County and Pierce County, because it's just absolutely, it's something that we can't replace. There isn't anything like it left. And as we see the old Weyerhaeuser property being developed, it's really important to me, and I'm sure to many other people, that if we have an opportunity, we need to take it. And I'm hoping that the Kilworth Foundations and the attorneys in the Kilworth Foundations are willing to talk to us if that is the goal of the City Council and the Mayor. There is an art show out in the hallway. It's called Arts Alive. It happens once a year, and I was on the Arts Commission for a number of years. This is an art show where people from around the community come, and they can bring up to 2 pieces of art. It's a judged show, so there is a chance for the public to have people's choice, and there are, on the table out there, there's these ballots. So it's really important for the artists who actually come and hang their work here and let everyone look at it. If you would take time when City Hall is open to look at the art and tell us what your favorite piece is. And then at the end of the show, there is a reception, and that artist will be very, very happy and very pleased, because it really is an honor to be chosen for the People's Choice. And at the last council meeting, I spoke about National Night Out, and I certainly agree with the mayor when he says that facts are important and the truth is important. And nothing that I said that evening was not a fact, and that was not truthful. And it was a really fascinating night. It was a great night. It was a great thing for the city. And next year will be even better. I just wanted to clear up any misconceptions people might have. Thank you.
And thank you, Councilmember Honda, for your work on that, and for the work on the Homeless Mothers Initiative. Great work.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I make a motion to extend the meeting past 10?
Oh, you know what? I've been meaning to do that. I didn't want to interrupt. Would you please do so?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we extend the meeting past 10 o'clock.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Somebody's been keeping their eye on the clock. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes. We're good to go. Councilor Roselski.
Thanks, Mayor Farrell. You know what, I just can't say enough about the Performing Arts and Events Center Gala and fundraiser that occurred earlier this month. You know, I really think that event is going to go down as a historical event in our city, and an important event in our city. It was really a night to remember, and you know, just so much happened that evening. My wife Sue and I had the honor of sitting right next to Joanne Paquette at her table, and Joanne is just amazing. She is one of the key inspirations that really made this facility come to life. I want to thank Teresa Yvonne, the executive director of the Performing Arts and Event Center, for her leadership and what you did to bring everything together and make that a memorable night. Teresa, it was just fantastic. One of the funnest nights we've had in a long, long time. What I was really impressed with, almost more than everything that night, was Teresa put up some timelines, actually a chart with the timeline going back, I believe, to 1988 or something like that, a long time ago, and then the different events that occurred along the way. And there were a lot of events that occurred along the way in order to make this happen. And what impressed me about that was Teresa said, look around you in this audience, and not only you in this audience, but many other people who can't be here tonight. Every one of you have had an important part in one or more of these milestones leading up to this particular grand opening and gala. And that impressed me because she's right. I just looked around the room, and everybody I saw had something to do with it. And I know everybody felt good about what Teresa said because they felt important.
important for what they did to make this this important facility happen. So I just was really impressed. You can't thank send enough thanks to the Federal Way Performing Arts Foundation and their history. I know it was called a previous name to that, but it was just fantastic. And the other person I want to thank is E.J. Walsh. E.J. took the reins of this facility midstream and just did a fantastic job taking it to the finish. And I always say you have to finish strong. Whatever you start, you have to finish strong. EJ was the right person for the job getting this done. Not only is he an expert professional engineer, but he's a great communicator, always keeping us informed of what was going on with the status of the construction and where we were. Just a tremendous job done by EJ. And lastly, rain. Thank you for bringing rain. I don't know who brought rain in, but it was fantastic. We were dancing in the aisles. After Dr. Burbage got up and led the charge in our section, my wife and I were up dancing, and she actually lost her voice. She sang every one of those songs because she's a mass Beatles fan, and she couldn't even talk after the event. I'm not going to say I was pleased with that, but anyway, it was just so fun. Anyway. And I just look forward to many more events like that coming to the Performing Arts and Events Center. This place is going to be important for our community. It's going to draw us together in a lot of ways, and it was sure a great start that night. So thank you, Teresa.
All right.
I also, I'm sorry, I'm not done. It's my night to take some time.
You got it.
Sorry, Mayor Farrell. I also want to thank Marwan Saloom, Desiree Winkler, and also, again, EJ for their expert leadership in the Public Works Department in many, many different ways. But what I want to emphasize tonight is with little fanfare, we passed motions to accept about $2 million in grant funding for different street projects, different surface water projects that are going around the city. And I know the work that they do getting these funds is not easy. Sometimes it's thankless, sometimes it doesn't pay off, but it does pay off most of the time, and when it does, it's big dollars. And these dollars are important for our city to continue to operate, running our streets, running different facets of the Public Works Department, like surface water and just different things that are important to operating our city. I also especially want to highlight the work of Deputy Director Desiree Winkler and Surface Water Manager Teresa Turlo in this, really for their part in working hard and doing the research and bringing these funds into the city that help us operate. Two other quick things. Saturday was the first annual Federal Way Symphony Blues Festival. It was really fun for those that were there. Not only was there great music, but these are the kind of events we really want to bring into our city. And it was well attended, and I think the people there had fun. And I really look forward to scheduling more events like this where we draw the community together. We can use these facilities. The Town Square Park was the perfect place for this. It was big enough, and it was just the right setting. So I commend whoever put that on. It was the Federal Way Symphony. Okay, so I commend the Federal Way Symphony for putting this on, bringing the community together in that place, and putting on a great festival. And then lastly, the next Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, the 2nd of October at 5 o'clock in council chambers right here. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good. That's where we're Cephas.
Thank you, Mayor. This Saturday is the chili cook-off at the farmer's market, and so we'd encourage people to come. It's $12, and you get to try several different kinds of chili, and then vote, and usually the police department wins, right? Always.
Whoa.
Is it not them? Huh? Oh, they're not. Okay. So, okay. So this year they're featuring Seahawks legend Jordan Babineau,
And so the theme is the Seahawks theme, so please wear your blue and green. And also, coming up, there is a documentary film screening called Home Stretch, and it's free at the library on September 27th at 6:30. And this documentary follows 3 homeless youth on how they went through high school as homeless youth. So, and their fight to stay in school. So I think it'd be very interesting to go to if you can. And then We Love Our City, where volunteers come together from mainly from churches, but the whole community is welcome, where they come together to serve our community. And I think I personally really appreciate it because it's people who usually don't have time to volunteer. Here's this one day where you can all come together as a community to serve your community. So it's at 1 o'clock, October 1st, and everybody meets at Journey Church on 320th, and then scattered to the different areas and different services that we can provide our community. And then several weeks ago, actually, in Seattle Times, there was How Long Will You Live? Was an article in Seattle Times, and I've heard this over and over, but it's very fascinating how zip code determines the outcome of your life. And so Federal Way is about 14 years. You live 14 years less than you would do on the east side. And so how do we turn that around? Why should our community, and it's not just Federal Way, by the way, South King County is impacted by this. So it's very fascinating to me, and it shouldn't be. It's really frustrating to hear those reports or to see that our communities are impacted. And a lot of it could be because, people are migrating south because of economics that drives us here and people here. And so I don't even know what to think about it because it's really sad. And then DV Awareness Month, I do work with survivors of domestic violence, and one thing that is clear is DV doesn't care what socioeconomic you come from, but when you're impacted and when you have no place to go, you could be in your car. And I have seen that with some of the people I work with. And and then this morning was the Reach Out Breakfast. And so there's this theme around homelessness and housing. And so thank you, Susan, for what you're doing, because it's really important, it's crucial. And I heard somebody say, which I hope is appropriate, it says if they had the tools, their history would have been different. And so let's give people the tools to change their lives, their journey, and make their story different. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Beveridge.
Thank you very much. I attended a meeting of the South County Area Transportation Board this morning, and the main presentations were on the Washington State Transportation Plan and their freight plan. And we also had a presentation on the King County Metro Fares Work Program. They've been examining their structure of their fares for transit, and people in South King County will be pleased to know that when they cross the zone line, so to speak, there will no longer be the additional charge for crossing that line, so that it will be less expensive to commute back and forth to Seattle. And they are, in general, trying to simplify their fare structure, which I believe all of us will appreciate. I also want to, in addition to Councilmember Kopang mentioned Center Stage's season opening this Friday, September 22nd, of Agatha Christie's Witness for the Prosecution. It should be a terrific play, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. I certainly enjoyed the opening presentations at the PAC and the gala, as did Councilmember Selsky, and I also was able to attend a concert on Sunday afternoon at the PAC, and it was just a terrific duo who got a standing ovation and a terrific response from the audience as well. So I look forward to the coming presentations. One of the next ones will be our own Federal Way Symphony, which will perform the first weekend in October. So we're looking forward to that. And there are a couple of other events coming up, but I'm going to conclude my report at this point. Thank you.
All right, and great job, everybody. With that, we are adjourned.